My name is Olajimoke Pokuola, and I'm Associate Director with Deloitte West Africa. I will be the moderator for this program alongside with Chizoba Mojeku. I'll be introducing her shortly. I've been with Deloitte for the past 12 years with a total years of experience of 18 years, close to 2 decades, and I have experience across the different areas of human capital, been involved in some transformative initiative across different industry and sectors as a span across different areas. That's brief introduction of myself. I will do a quick introduction of Chizoba Mojeku as well, which is the other moderator. Chizoba Mojeku is a CHRO, CEO, transformation, and executive coach for Dev Attracts Consulting. She's got multiple qualification and certification to back up her years of experience. She has over 2 decades of experience in the space of HR and workforce transformation, cutting across different industry, from the manufacturing to operations to marketing, consulting, as well as the telecommunication space. She's got extensive hands-on experience in organizational design, change management, continuous improvement, and global HR management, as well as other HR transformation initiatives. She's worked in the leading organizations such as Accenture, from Accenture to MTN, ECOWAS, and Central Bank, where she recently retired as the Director of Human Resources. That's a brief introduction of Chizoba. I'm sure most of us are familiar with Chizoba in the HR space. She's one of our veterans there. We're both going to be moderating this program together this morning. Chizoba, welcome. So I'll quickly do a run through our agenda. And to start with, just like I've introduced myself and the other moderator, that is Chizoba, I would like each and every one of us to do a quick introduction of ourselves by dropping our names in the chat box, right? Indicate your name, your organization, and the industry where you play for us, please. As we move ahead with the program, please drop your name, your organization name, and the industry where you play in. Thank you. That then takes me to introducing to you our host for today. That's Joseph Olofinshola. After introducing Joseph Olofinshola to you, we're going to be having our first poll, which is going to be quite exciting for every one of us. And we'll close that poll with Chizoba introducing all our panel members, then moderating the question and answers. Then we move into the second poll. Then we have a vote of thanks by the host or the consulting lead, Yemi Saka. So this is our program for today, and we're going to try as much as possible to keep to time. We intend to have the after party as well, the party after party as well at the end of the entire session for those that will be willing to join that. Thank you. Please do not forget to continue to put your names, your organization, and the industry where you play in the chat box. So while we're doing that, I'll do a quick, I'll share a quick housekeeping rules for everybody as we progress on this program. Please, we encourage everybody to be present here. Unplug, disconnect, be here, and be in the moment. It's important you're in the moment so you don't lose sight of the insightful information that we'll be passing out in here. If you have any questions for the speaker during the presentation, please kindly use the question and answer features located on the toolbar of your screen. Also, if you would like to make any comment during the presentation, kindly use the chat features on your screen. Thank you. So having done that this morning, while the introduction is going on, I would like us to meet the host for today. That is Joseph Olofinshola. I'm sure most of us are familiar or have heard or have interacted with Joseph at different times. Joseph Olofinshola is our human capital partner for West Africa and our public sector leader for West Africa as well. He also has multiple qualification and certification to support his experience. Joseph has well over 2 decades of work experience, in his background in finance, to risk management, and now human capital. He provides a balanced view of insight on how human capital can be used to derive values in different organizations. Joseph has been involved in several workshops, learning. He's a certified facilitator. He's come up with viable solutions for different clients within the different space, either public or private sector that we have. His experience cuts across the different value chain in HR, and then he's done extensively well in learning, in skill framework, in skill framework implementation, future of work, HC fundamentals, and many more others. So here I present to you Joseph Olofinshola. Joseph, welcome.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much, Jumoke. Just to join Jumoke's, excitement, I'm equally super excited to have, all of us here this morning, starting with a very great panelist, and also more importantly, our audience. You will recall some months ago when we had our HC Trend event, we did, based on popular demand, we did promise at that point that we'll be coming back with a focus on this particular theme of today. And I really do look forward to an exciting time in terms of how, we discuss. So it's a discussion really this morning, and hoping that at the end of the day, there will be a lot of things to learn. So very quickly, just, to welcome all of us. I think in the last, so do you want to go ahead, Jumoke, or you want to run the poll first before I go ahead?
No, please go ahead. The poll comes after you.
All right, so thank you very much. Okay, fantastic. So you would all agree with me that, today, not even just today, prior to now, in the last couple of years, we've seen business, needs, changing. People are asking, businesses are asking for, doing different things, trying to respond to market realities, changes in the environment, globally and internationally, and even locally. And to that extent, we've seen businesses prioritizing over time in terms of what their needs are and what is driving those needs. So we're seeing things around flexibility, being a major conversation. We're seeing agility. In the last couple of years, obviously I've talked about being agile, right? And clearly we all know that, post-COVID, the reality with what we found ourselves during the COVID period, things that we thought we could not do, we're able to do those things, we're able to think on our feet. And to that extent, agility has become the order of the day. And we've seen issues around, creativity becoming topical, innovation becoming very topical issues, and all in an attempt to increase, value, and more importantly today, where we're talking about, also, broaden the shareholder, what we call the shareholder landscape in itself. And that was driving a lot in terms of, what businesses are expecting today. So leaders are beginning to seek fresh ways of working, and of course, the employees as well. Again, you recall, for those who can remember on our call, the HC Trend event, we had 2 years ago, not even last year, where we talk about relationship between the employer and the employee, and we say the fact that it's changing, and if you're not a family, what are we? So again, we see, employees relentlessly, beginning to become more open, and they want something new, something bigger than what they do. So to that extent, it's driving a lot of changes. And as we see in terms of that, so you can begin to imagine, you as an individual, and I say this quite often, that, when we all woke up this morning, we all woke up as individuals. We didn't wake up as, a staff of X, of a particular organization. You didn't wake up as a job holder or as a title holder. You probably woke up as an individual. And as an individual, we constantly want to connect to something that's bigger than us or what we do at the moment. So clearly, you can imagine a place where, people could do their best work by applying that very unique skills, that they have and talents to deliver on those business outcomes, what a kind of, environment we will have. And that's what is driving, us in terms of what we do. So clearly, taking us to the next slide. So you see that, in the introductory part of, there was a video we shared, in the introduction, and that video basically did explain the fact that a lot of the things we've done today, it's all around jobs. And in terms of what do I mean by that? Our entire, talent life cycle, whatever you want to call it, employee life cycle or talent life cycle, it's all, based or underpinned by job, in the sense that, it's our structures, our hierarchies, our talent practices, they're all based on job. Now, how do we define job? So clearly, as we speak today, the way we look at job, and I'm sure, for everyone on the call, this is quite, very basic. To say job, it simply means task, right? Piece of work that we do. And, it is what someone is employed to do. So to that extent, we talk about job, we talk about work to be done. But again, what is the work to be done? And that's what we're going to talk a bit more, as I go ahead. So taking to the next slide very quickly. So a lot, like I said, in jobs underpin the current talent management landscape. What do I mean by that? Everything around the HR practices, from the hierarchies we have to, what we do in HR across the value chain, it's all about job. So job, it's actually central. And to that extent, we also see, and I'm also sharing with you, because of some of the use cases, we see that even from a departmental perspective, it's all about job. We define those boundaries. I'm in finance, you're in HR, I'm in supply chain, you are in operations, I'm in procurement, I'm in legal. It's all about, so we have those departmental divisions, all again around jobs, right? And then in terms of the hierarchies we created, it's all about those jobs itself. So you look at the hierarchy. So I'm a senior XYZ today, next time to be a manager, all from a hierarchy perspective and not from a job perspective. Now, and that it's also begin to talk about, like skills. Interesting, we had a very interesting session yesterday with some of our panelists, and this was quite something we had this fireworks, which just for me was interesting, and I'm looking forward to that firework today as well, as our very our panelists who are quite deep in this areas speak to us. But the one thing here is that even talking about the job, the idea is that what we see is a lot of times that we have fixed set skills. With the job description, we define. So at the end of the day, the job defines the skills requirements and so on. So that's what we see today. But what are we seeing, right? We're seeing that work that we define as those that's task and task or piece of work to be done. We're going to see it changing, right? We're seeing, and you will agree with me that especially with COVID, how a lot of things actually changed, right? And not even that. So if you also ask me, talk about the future of work, we talk about future work exactly now. So it's no longer future work, it's a now work. And we've seen a lot of things around work changing. What is the work to be done? Where is the work to be done? Who does the work? How is the work to be done? Those are conversations that we've been having the last couple of years. And this conversation will continue, especially as we talk about, welcoming the new generation into the workspace. So what is work, right? Work is changing. And can I get back to the previous slide? Work is changing, it's becoming very fluid, not predetermined. Imagine again in the video I'll share with you, 36% of people doing the work in some organizations are not even their staff. They don't have job titles. They're not job holders. They are from outside and they're happy to deliver. And I'm sure, from our panelists, you're going to hear some of those examples as well. So jobs are becoming non-routine, that was like what we used to do. I was saying something yesterday that a lot of time, even when we draft our job descriptions, right? I know that's, that has changed now, but to a large extent, we see that at the last item on the job description is, you will do any other task assigned to you. So that way, that takes you out of that job description in itself. So we see job, becoming non-routine. We see jobs being done in group. We see jobs now, work now being more focused on creating value. We need to deliver value to a particular customer. We need to bring people together in an organization to deliver on that work. It's all about value. It's all about outcome, not in terms of that output that we see. So as work is changing, right? What does this also mean for us? So we'll see that as work is changing, this in itself means it's beginning to see a lot of things around. It's changing that talent landscape and asking, demanding for a new approach. And what do I mean by that? So of course, that quest for agility, right, remains. And I'm sure if you ask a lot of people on the call today, on this particular session, this webinar, you will realize that I doubt if there's one civil organization where we haven't spoken about agile being part of our principles going forward. That's how we work. The war for talent, we can't overemphasize that. It is real. And whether it is Japa, whether it is Japada, whichever you want to, whether people are going and are coming back, let's ask ourselves that question: where they are going, right? We may say, oh, you know what, they're not finding all the right jobs, but there's jobs for them to be done. So there's always that job to be done somewhere, whether you are here doing the work outside. But the reality is that we seek for, there's talent. That's a challenge for where do we get talent. And I did mention this about a year ago. The talent, space, right? It's talent acquisition space. And the last time we quantified it was running to almost about $886 billion or thereabouts, $1 million. Sorry, $1 million. And what does that mean? It means that there is so much in that talent, space in terms of finished talent shortages and so on. We see, again, a sort of drive from a diversity perspective, right? Where there's people, talking about the S, and you define the S in that ESG, right? Where there's so much around, people having there's fairness, there's equity, there's greater opportunity for people to work. That's what people want to see. That's what employees want to see. So we also see that rapidly changing skills, right? Skills are changing, and these skills are changing because business needs, in themselves are also changing. So therefore, skills are also changing. And of course, we also see the issue of what we call the stakeholder capitalism, not the shareholder anymore, where of course people are beginning to ask value, shareholders are asking for value, and then all that stakeholders, I'm an employee, I'm also asking for value. I'm asking you questions. You have my data. What do you do with my data? I'm asking for value. I've been here with you. I give X, Y, Z. What do I get in return? So people are asking questions. I have this 100 skills that I want to leverage on. I can't leverage on it. So I rather go and do things on my own. So these are some of the things we're seeing as it's driving, a shift or calling for a shift and a change. Next slide. So what then are we saying? We're saying job has therefore evolved, or work has therefore evolved beyond the job. So it's not about the job anymore. Okay. Now I'm going to speak about at some point in terms of this is not a revolution. It is an evolution. So we're not, trying to revolt in a way. We're trying to create an evolution. And, HR is meant to lead this entire game, right? The same way I did, tell a lot of us during the period of, we had that opportunity as HR leaders to actually be in the forefront, when we had the COVID era, where it was a lot of constant conversation between the CHRO and, of course, the CHRO and as well as the CEO, constantly having conversation, and that's and helping us to reset the talent agenda. So the same way, this is also bringing this to the fore. The fact that like I said, work has evolved beyond job, and when you then ask people, right, because part of the survey that we did, trying to get a sense. Interestingly, we had a particular survey, and there's several of them where people had said, the work that they do, right, they are actually outside the stated job responsibility. And you can imagine 71% in that particular survey, and only 24% said that what they do today, right, is exactly what they have in the job description. What does that suggest? It simply means that work is beyond, job. So what does that mean for us going forward? So what then, interestingly, thank you very much. We're also looking at, also talking to executives and HR leaders, and we're, all seems to be in alignment that, skills are becoming more important to address the evolution of work in itself, or the nature of work. So it's that's where you have 98%, people planning, organizational planning to move towards a skills-based organization. And I will speak about this. This doesn't have to be total. It could be done, it could be partial, right? In different ways. And we see, almost like 90% that are actively experimenting with skills-based approach. So what exactly then do we mean, right? What is skills-based? What is job-based? We're going to speak a bit about. Let me just quickly unpack, what is skill. Next slide. So what are skills? So skills, and I'm going to speak to a lot of things around this in terms of what we currently do today. I'm doing skills-based, I'm doing competency-based, fantastic. I mean, we're not throwing those things away. That's what we say, it's not a revolution. It's an, evolution. And because this evolution, they come with a lot of gains and benefits. So from a skills, point of view, so we're saying skills today are, capabilities, right? And of course, talk about emotional thinking and several other ones. And of course, the technical, abilities, where it's really about the hard skills, okay? I'm an accountant, or I'm doing accounting, I'm coding, data analysis, fantastic. Now, the other bit of it is the potential. We do leverage on this when we talk about, talk about our talent management, our talent pool, whatever it says, framework we're using, when we talk about, performance, talk about potential. But the reality is that how often do we leverage on the potential? This is one bit that we really do focus a lot of attention on. And that really is what makes up skills. Okay. And these skills then defines, and I talk about the workers. So from skills, so I've spoken about job. Okay. And I've spoken about how job is the work and how the work is evolving, now becoming very fluid, very non-routine, being done, in groups, creating value to what skills, are. And then talking about the worker. So what we're saying, so the worker today, it's not the guy or those guys or those people who are job holders. That's not the worker. So I remember the example I gave earlier. You have several people from, outside of the organization supporting you at different times. And I'm sure, the likes of Esther and Muiwa and Co, Dotun, Fatima will be talking about a bit about that. So the reality is that, so when we say workers today, we're not talking about people, in jobs, right? In that box that we created that we call it a job. We're not talking about the title that we've created. We're talking about individuals who have unique skills, interest, passion, motivation, right? Who have a particular way of work, right? Preferences, and so on. So let's even focus on the skills, the interest, the passion, so I will call them, people with portfolio of skills, right? And capabilities, right? And interest and passion, right? That sit in an organization and we're probably not seeing, what we call it the latent talent. So workers today, like we said, I was seeing this particular data says, 73% says that skills practice will improve their work experience. That's what they're saying. So you can imagine, remember earlier, 71% of workers survey, of people survey said, what I do really is not within my job. It's not what you define for me as job description. I'm actually doing something outside of this. And you then have this same, sort of people saying, I'm going to get a better experience because I can actually, leverage on my skills and my talents to deliver on the goals of the organization as opposed to just confining me within a job, right? We see, also another 6% saying that, they would more likely to be attracted to and remain in an organization that values and make decisions based on their demonstrated skills, right? So, and I can talk from now to tomorrow in terms of how we reward those skills, right? So we also talk about, the other 50%, but I think the message here is, to support, the whole idea here is around that, for the workers, recognize the fact that these are a bunch of individuals with skills, unique skills, and no longer job holders, not people in the job. So what's trying to put this together, as I try to wrap up. So when you talk about job base, the focus is on formal job descriptions and workers being viewed as job holders. Now, from a skills based, we're saying that it's now looking into being able to tap to that very broad range of workers' capabilities to achieve desired outcomes, right? Solve problems, and of course, base people's decisions on the skills rather than being the job. So in doing this, next slide. So part of what we've seen, I'm going to just, because I'm going to be sharing this slide, so just run through this quickly. So recall earlier, I did say that, how we've built our talent practices, up till now, have been based on the, on jobs. But we're saying now it has to be based largely on skills. Now, what am I saying here? And I did mention that it is not a revolution, it was an evolution. So you can see that there's some things that we're doing today, but we're saying we need to move from what we're doing, right? Evolve to something, that's different. You have your talent, market place, which is internal. We have the external, right? But what do we do? So there's a job to be done today we need to create, there's a new role today to be filled, or someone that's left a role. We do internal advertisement. Fantastic. It's all based on jobs, right? And we're saying, no, we need to move away from it being a job, but rather it has to be skills-based, right? We talk about, things around, skills-based teams, skills-based reward, and so on. So skills-based career, hiring, learning and development, skills-based performance management, skills-based workforce planning, and of course, and so on. So this just basically speaks to some of the, benefits, right? Either from the fact that it tends to help for us to place our talent, appropriately. It helps to drive productivity. It helps to create a high-performing team to help us to grow the business, improve innovation, of course, create that digital, agility, and that's issue of flexibility, and also improves, D&I or DI. So very quickly, do we have case studies? Do we have examples? Of course, we do have. I want to probably share about 2 of them, and I'll just leave the rest. I'll speak, and I like the Unilever story. Now, the Unilever story, it's, basically saying, how do we unlock the potential of our workforce, right? We recognize that there's so much for us to be done, and we need to see how we do it. And they created what they call the U-Worker, right? Which of course, like I said, I'm going to share this with you. So they went on, for their own talent markets, in internal talent marketplace. They had to fractionalize their job. Now, today, do we do a bit of this? There's some bit of partial, but some questions that now move to total fractionalization. We do a lot of broadening of jobs today in our organization. Oh, this job is not doing this. Oh, let's do job enrichment. We are broadening the jobs. But the whole idea is that we're moving from just broadening, but actually fractionalizing. Fractionalizing just means breaking those jobs down into tasks, into projects, right? Across different, areas of department. And then, of course, we see how then work. And then they also, in terms of to build skills, they created what they call the My Future Fit plan, which all around skills, right? And of course, leverage on technology to build skills, to know what need to do, and so on. And interestingly, by doing this, they actually, were able to gain about 700,000 hours, right, of unlocked capacity to put forward, more than 3,000 business critical, projects. You can imagine, right, for them to solve. And at the end of the day, they actually were able to save, said overall productivity soared by 14% by doing this. Let's go ahead, please. Same with MasterCard, okay? So again, realize the fact that, with the COVID, the need for them to begin to rethink how things are done. And on the back of that, again, they also, had to then think about, let's not look at, traditionally at department time, we run in silos, right? And for them, it's not just about having this department run in silos, but let's think about, what we need to do so that, let's create, and they call what to call the project possible, which we'll call the art of the possible. And that's what we need to think a lot. And what do? They match employees with high priority tasks across the organization, irrespective of whatever department or whatever department they came from. And at the end of the day, the result, 3/4 of the workforce, of course, they're now registered, and they were able to unlock 100,000 hours through internal mobility, right? Moving people internally. And of course, at the end of the day, by leveraging on that internal pool, that internal talent marketplace, they were able to save cost, they achieve a cost saving of $21 million. Standard Chartered, so again, it's another practical example. Standard Chartered, story, keep it very simple. They did a 3-year strategy, workforce plan, and they recognized that, in that, for them to be able to succeed or to achieve their goals, they had, there are going to be 14,000 new jobs. 14,000 current jobs that were going to sunset. Okay, and then there is also 9,000 new jobs, right, that were going to be created. So which they call the sunrise jobs. So there's a sunset and a sunrise job. And the question is, what do we do with this? Cut long story short, talking to the CEO, CHRO, you know what, if we are going to do this, they had, and that's what I think is going to be critical for a lot of HR people here. It's how do you have this tough, they look at this and say, if you're going to take out the 14,000, bring new 1,000 people, what will happen? By the time they were done with those analysis, the amount was quite staggering, and how do you have a conversation with the CEO or a CFRO? I'm sorry, a CFO. So that's meeting with the CFO and say, you know what, we can actually rethink about this whole thing. And they launched what they call the Future Skills Academy. right? I have an AI platform for personalizing learning, recommending content based on individual interest, right? Because you have them in there. Remember that was discussed, we define the work now being individuals with multiple set of skills. At the end of the day, what are the things that they achieved? What they achieved at the end of the day, 7,000, standard chartered employees signed up, right? But more importantly, they are able to lock $2.5 million worth of productivity, right? And so on. So very next one quickly. And of course, Shell was more of a skills, based, learning, as it were. So again, what did Shell do? I'm going to leave the story, but the long and short of it is that they transited to skills-based organization where they identify, because they're actually going through, navigating the energy transition, initiative, right? And for it to drive innovation, it was clear that they had several skills that they need to. And what they did was to get people with different interests, and then of course build people over time, and of course create what they call, the future. I think they also had the future skills there about, that they did. So in summary, as we close, so these are other examples. People have moved from skills-based, of course, workforce practices from Cargill to Shell, and so you're going to see our skills hub, skills-based learning. So we see this across different, industries from, Cargill, from Shell. So whether it's manufacturing, whether it is agriculture, whether it is telecoms, insurance, educational provider, healthcare. So just mention it, you can see that have leverage on skills-based organization. So, I think, the question here, however, is that people are going to ask that question. I'm sure, why, this is, why, why is everybody not on the same, platform? Like any human endeavor, there will always be certain obstacles. Now, however, what I've always told people is that the reason why, A will give for his failure or for his for not adopting a particular process is the same reason that B will give for adopting that same process. That may sound, illogical, but the reality is true, right? Because A will continue to, remain static and say, it's not going to happen, or these are the obstacles, and will, continue to, for the right word now, continue to magnify that obstacle, as opposed to rather thinking of what do we do. So, it's either the issues around, we cannot, we don't have data, oftentimes there's no common taxonomy, because you must have a common language for skills if you're going to run through this. So data issue, there's ecosystem design, there's going to be governance, issue, a skills taxonomy, like I said, if you're going to run a skills-based organization, you must have what we call a skills-based talent philosophy. You must have a common definition of what skills are in the organization, so that, because of that, there will be issue around ownership, who owns it, what's the governance going to be like, how do we even collect the data, right? In terms of, for us to even know the skills we have in-house, right? So, and of course, within the ecosystem, so I will talk about the issue of, as short as my last slide, the workforce of one. So in dealing with this, we're saying, what do we need to do? Remember, think evolution, not revolution. Start with the why. Why am I doing this? You can't tell a CEO that I want to do transition to talent or to sort of skills-based. That's not the issue. That's not the conversation. The conversation is that, we need to solve business. We need to solve our client's problem or customer's problem. We need to unlock, skills in the organization. We need to, we're losing talent, we're losing skills, and we need to be able to buy these skills. Why are we buying them when we can actually build them internally? So there are different reasons, we need to cut costs by doing X, Y, Z. So, we must think from that particular perspective. Lay the foundation. You can start to do phase development, and of course, think about the ownership and the governance. So by way of closing, and hand over thereafter to our moderators, and of course, our interesting, panelists. So the issue here is, whatever we're doing, there are 4 guiding principles, right? I'm happy to come back to speak a bit about this. 4 guiding principles, that will guide organizations going to that skills-based organization. And what are they? How do we liberate work and workers? Recognizing that we said earlier, work today are becoming fluid, right? And that will change many things. Now, don't forget, and we say including and beyond the job. So you see, you're not throwing the job away, but you're just saying, hey, at the end of the day, it's expanding. And, you know, you talk about, how do we base our decisions, on, work and workforce decisions on skills and not on jobs. Of course, how do we build the skills hub? It's not my duty to talk about this. It's going to be our panelists will speak about a bit more, but just provide that background. And of course, how do we develop the workforce of one? Today, you hire people from different outside of the organization, whether they're gig workers, whether they're contractors, whether they're freelancers, right? How do we do this? Right. So because these are things that you must think about, because you also look at the workforce ecosystem to drive value. So at this point, I think I want to yield the floor to our moderators, and we can take it from there. Thank you very much. Once again, I welcome everyone and look forward to that interesting firework. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joseph, for that short but detailed information you've passed across, from taking us from job being the work that we do, the value we get from it, talking about the skills, what the skills means, and relating it to the alignment. The alignment that skills is very important. That's the alignment by the ESCO members as well as our HR leaders to who a worker is actually, and differentiating what job and skill-based organization is. And you also spoke briefly about what we should do away with when it comes to job-based, and how should we move to skill-based organization using different use cases, from Unilever to Shell to Standard Chartered and many others. And you talked about the obstacles, the unexpected challenges that we're likely to face in the course of transitioning, right? And you talked about evolving and not revolving, which is very important to note, and narrow it down to the 4 major way to practice skill-based organization. Thank you very much for that insightful information. And that will take me to our first poll. So I will encourage and ask everybody to bring out their phone. Please, let's bring out our phones. Let's bring out our phones, please, and let's participate in this. Do we have our phones ready? So on the screen, we're going to see the menti.com. Please, you can use the QR code to the left. And if you are not able to gain access through the PR code, please kindly go to www.menti.com and type the code 32965325. Please, let's get our phones and begin to participate here. And the question goes, how does the skill-based organization align with your current HR practices in your various organizations? Yes, we'd like to know how the skill-based organization aligns with your current HR practices. Please leverage the QR codes. And where you are not able to access through the PR code, please go to menti.com. The code remains 32965325. You will see the code at the top of this slide showing on the screen, and then the QR code you see at the bottom to the left. Please, let's continue to join the poll. We're getting responses, interesting responses. So while we're receiving responses, I'd like to introduce my other moderator, which is Chizoba, who is Chizoba Mojeku, as rightly introduced earlier. Chizoba, I think it would be nice to have you take over from here, introduce our great panel members, and I look forward to the insightful discussion. Thank you. Chizoba, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Jumoke. And let me just put on my camera. Good morning, everyone. And very bright, beautiful Wednesday morning, and a very interesting topic that we have been dealing with. Listening to Joseph, he just ran through the report for us and contextualized that report for us. And I'm hoping that we're going to have a great conversation going forward. We have a very interesting mix in our panel, and we have our Chief HR Officer from NNPC, we've got from First Bank, that's the financial services. We've also got from telecoms, as well as the manufacturing that's represented here. So this morning we have 4 panelists. We've got Fatima Yakubu, Olumuyiwa Olulaja, Esther Akinukawe, and Dotu Adako. Fatima is the Chief Human Resources Officer of NNPC Limited. Muyiwa Olulaja is the Group Head Human Capital Management and Development of the First Bank Limited. Esther is the Chief HR Officer for MTN Nigeria Communications, and Dotu Adako is the Group Head Human Resources BUA Group. They will be talking, sharing their own perspective on this trend and having conversations. And I'm hoping that as you listen to them, you'll have questions. You also, if you do have questions from Joseph's session, please kindly drop it in the chat room. We will start with Dotu, and Dotu is going to be talking to us about how we can liberate work from the confines of the job. Dotu is going to share what that means for him, and then we will follow up with some other questions for Dotu. So please kindly put your questions as you listen to Dotu. Please put your questions in the chat room, because we will be picking up those questions to engage our panelists. Thank you very much, Dotu. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. I want to appreciate Deloitte for this great opportunity. Thinking of going out to we're going out to getting consultants until, a suggestion came that, look, we could look inward and be able to see how some of our employees can deal with this matter. And I must be sincere. When we looked inward, we found out that, look, there's so many of our employees who have been able to work in that capacity, who have such skills that we require from consultants or from people from outside. And by the time we looked into that, we had a good number of our employees who were around the table, and we had our discussions. And at the end of the day, we were able to successfully, deliver the project that we put on the table, as it were. So when this is done, basically what we are doing is that we are unbundling our talents and skills within the organization or the concerned entity. So I would personally want to encourage the organization that is an area that we need to look into, and it's an area that we need to progress. And I was mentioning COVID-19 when it came upon us. Nobody was prepared for it. We never can tell what is also looking in the dark that is going to come upon us, and the question is, what are we going to do? So it's very, very critical. We need to begin to look into this, because it's going to be good for the organization, and of course, it's going to enhance the progress and the development of the organization. Mm-hmm. The other thing that is very critical for us is that when we do this, we'll be financing and enabling employees to choose projects to align with their skills and interests within the organization. I've had the opportunity of interviewing people, and I've noticed that to a large extent, we advertise on the strength of the job to be done, and people want to, write their resume in line with the requirements of the job that you have. But most times, when I have discussions with a good number of applicants, I found out that, look, beyond what they have in their resumes, there are still a lot of potential skills, that are in there. So we've had some cases in the past that we have to say, fine, we are discussing with you on this job, and we have to consider such applicants for some other jobs as based on the skills that they possess. So it will help to unlock, the potentials you have in your people, and of course to enhance, and in the process of doing that, we are enhancing the growth of the organization. What other advantage that we have from this is that skills development and learning, it gives room for skills development and life, long learning within the organization, so that by the time you focus more on liberating people from the confines of job, and you are focusing on their skills, it creates room for that organization to be a skills-based organization, and learning takes place, and it becomes a continuous thing, as much as possible. But the question, the question to ask at this point in time, is it going to be easy? is it going to be, a walk in the park for us? Which I want to say it's not going to be a walk in the park. And like Joseph rightly said, nobody is thinking the revolution, but I, as much as possible, organizations beginning to think of how to evolve, maybe by taking some projects and looking into some assignments, and start building talent and building skills around all of that before it becomes, a tradition or becomes a custom within that organization. So it's not going to be easy. It's going to be about transitioning, and it will take a lot, of evolution and not outright evolution, and all of that. So having said that,
Dr., I was just going to follow up because you raised something that I think resonates with people, when you talked about when people interview.
Yeah.
So people just write their CVs to meet the job. So we really, in some ways, don't meet the person. We are meeting an individual that has been tailored more or less, for a particular job. So I'd like you to, when we are writing job descriptions, I want to understand, how does HR think in terms of those job descriptions, and what are those challenges with those job descriptions? Because, it's those job descriptions that fit people into that box.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chizoba. That has always been the tradition, as it were. Okay, and as far as I'm concerned, I think for us in HR, we're beginning to move from, a job description-driven environment, coming into competency or skills-based, environment as it were. I mean, using my own experience. And I have taken it upon myself as much as possible that whenever we are looking at resumes of, potential candidates, we don't basically look at what is to be delivered, because I've had a lot of training on competency-based interviewing. So it becomes easier for me. And I've tried to bring my HR practitioners around here on board on how to look more beyond what is in the job description. All right. So traditionally, we tend to align, the job to what is in the job description. But ideally, what we are supposed to be doing, and I'm speaking to every HR practitioners here, is to look beyond, number one is for us to be able to, train our people to understand how to interview people from the perspective of, competency-based or skills-based, such like we're looking at the abilities, we're looking at the capabilities, we're looking at the skills, the knowledge, all together, and not just looking at, oh, this guy, he has done this before, so he has the ability to do it. And in structuring this up, I've had so many cases of, interviews that I have to turn down, that I have to, say, because we are not looking from the way we're supposed to be looking at it. So I would say very clearly that, look, as practitioners and as professionals, we have come to a point where we should be looking beyond what the content of the job is, rather than looking at the holistic position of the skills or the, and the competencies that the candidate possess in order for us to be able to make use of the employee. And like Joseph already said, when you are given a job description, the last part of it is usually you can be given another job to do, which means you have to prepare yourself, to get in, a candidate who can fit into any kind of job, by the time you bring him or her into your system or into your organization, as much as possible. And I also want to say this, right from the point of talent acquisition or recruitment or interviewing, it's also very good as a philosophy for the organization to be able to determine what are the right skills, that are required for that business environment. What are the competencies that are required for that right environment? And that should form the basis for which you are going to be discussing with your candidate, such that right from the entry level to the leadership level, you have people who have got the right skills that are required or the right competencies that are required to deliver results, within your organization. So that's the way I look at it and I see it here.
Thank you so much, Dotun, for positioning this for us. That, even within Nigeria, we've got organizations that are looking beyond the job description. And so when we're talking to people in terms of what skills do they have, the whole person. Let's look at the whole person and then see how that person fits within the organization and how that person will bring value to the organization irrespective of the job title or the position that we have recruited the person. And just to position this for our participants, Dotun has had a tremendous experience in manufacturing. We come from the same family. I started my career in Guinness, and he started a Nigerian bottling company. So we are manufacturing people at heart, but much more than manufacturing, he's also moved into human resources for a service provider, the VSF Global Services, and then now transitioned into the BUA Group. So you can see that he's got wide and varied experience, and that's why he's been able to dimension this for us, that we've got to free people from job descriptions. And then also to start looking at people much more than what they have put in their CVs. Have conversations, have your interview or your talent acquisition process that enables you to see the whole person. That's going to lead us into the next conversation that we're going to have. And this conversation we're going to be having with Fatima Yakubu, who's a business leader, one of the ones who has transitioned from finance and accounting successfully into human resources. And she's had over 30 years of experience within in various levels of the corporate environment, and currently the Chief HR Officer of NNPC Limited. Yesterday, when Fatima and I were having a conversation, she's successfully, been part of that transition from public sector, transitioning the public sector organization into a limited liability company. And that experience is going to come to bear in the conversation that we're going to be having with Fatima. We've talked about liberating the work from the job. And now we are talking about liberating workers from being employees in a job, in a carton, in a box, in a basket, to the workforce of one. So Fatima, share your perspectives on this area, and then we can follow up with questions. So for participants, please put your questions in the Q&A so that we can pick it up and be able to share your questions with the panelists. Thank you very much, Fatima. Over to you.
I'm glad to be here. I've heard a lot of things from Dotun and Mr. Joseph, and they've actually set the tone. Traditionally, people look at workforce of one as something really strange. But if you look at it, somehow, we've all been doing this workforce of one in terms of working in projects, in teams, in different combination of groups to be able to deliver targets. When Dotun was talking about resourcing, recruiting talent, remember when we recruit young graduates or graduates, we don't recruit them totally based on their CV. Just ask what they study, various things. You're hiring them based on the skills and their potentials, their ability to be trained. You bring them in, you develop them take them around for induction, do all you can, and then you stick them into boxes. You stick them into the jobs. So that's where we start well, we go back and stick them into the jobs. So what I hear us having a conversation today is how can we not stick them in boxes, still use the same strategy and achieve our goals. It is doable. It is something that we have done in different ways as a project teams which have delivered. For us, the transition, the COVID has also shown us that it is possible. We've done it in different ways and we have achieved a lot of things. most of the things that workforce of one requires is around agility, shorter time deliveries, and kind of adaptability. As HR professionals, I think the challenges we have where we keep going back and sticking them into boxes is because we're not able to measure. We're stuck with the hierarchical part of the growing by job. So you are stuck into trying to fit people into a box because you don't know how to manage the rest of it. So I think the job lies with us to be able to be flexible, to be able to think outside the box. How can we do this? How can we keep this project teams or work teams that come in with different sets of skills to deliver on a task or to deliver on a program or anything that would add value to the organization, be it financial, be it a service, be it whatever it is. Yes, it may not completely work in all the areas where you have technical, production, operations areas, but even in those areas, you find that you have technical authorities where you have people who are known for their expertise in their skills. And in a lot of the IOC organizations, you find that they earn more than the person sitting on a particular job because their skills are the ones that are being recognized. So for me, the workforce of one is doable. The workforce of one is something that says that people should be able to have some sort of flexibility, adaptability, and have the ability to do different things, not tied to the job description. Even though the job description can be as flexible as you want it to be, you can put as many skills, but you're not stuck in a particular job. Around the requirements for that work of one is mostly creating the enabling environment across the cross-functional teams, creating a sense of collaboration, creating a work environment that allows people to be the best they can be. So looking back at what Dotun said, they work from anywhere. You can do anything from anywhere because you have a team of people. So you have to be able to also look around rewards. How do you reward teams? I'm not sure as a HR community we've been able to do that properly. We're stuck in rewarding individuals or particular activities. But if you're able to come up with guardrails around how we reward group work. So when you're working as a team of one, you can be flexible and be anywhere and be able to earn more and be able to do it from anywhere and be able to achieve and deliver value. The fact that you lose authority because of the box that we have put you in is something that we also have to give that sense of satisfaction to people. If you look at the generations that are coming into the job place, they are the ones that actually require more of this. From between the Z, the A, the X, the Y, you find that automation has come to stay. Automation is the key driver for this workforce of one. Because once you have that automation in place, you are able to do that from anywhere, to do the jobs with different skills, to be able to encourage people to have different skills. And these young ones are looking, like Joseph said, for fairness, for agility, to do things differently, to be able to do things and be able to be satisfied. And they only do that, they don't get stuck in doing a particular activity. They would like to do things, various things. And back to the ability to create your consulting team within your organization. I think it worked for us during the transition because our transition was actually driven by, we did have a consultant, but we had a lot of our people acting as those internal consultants. And that was why we were very successful in that, because we were able to use the people who knew our pain points, knew what we wanted to do, knew where we wanted to go, and to be able to help us, the outside consultants were able to help us with the guide and the guardrails for us to be able to get to where we want to. So it's really, the internal consultants are, like Dotun mentioned, are very, very useful and important. I think it's just a mindset. It's our ability to get out of that box. And even for the, will I say, the public sector, in the public sector, you find that they are pushing, the drive towards automation is getting more and more. A lot of the ministries, the MDAs are going down to automation. And with the move to automation, it's an enabler. The next thing would be to change the culture. Once you do that, it is going to be very easy to have this evolution happen within our lifetime, if possible. So I guess it's doable. It has started in different forms, but it hasn't been named or organized by us as the HR professionals to be able to measure, to be able to put, there was something you talked about, verifiable skills. There's lack of trust. So when you say you're hiring somebody for skills, you need to verify those skills. How do you verify?
Recording has stopped. This meeting is being recorded.
You would have been able to have something that allows you to find out where people have these skills. Where do these skills stay? What type of array of skills does this person possess that I would be able to use in creating these teams that will deliver value for me? So that is one of the challenges that would be there. That's what the challenges I see that as HR professionals, how do we get that trust? How do we value, how do we know what people are writing or saying that they have done outside is actually there? So when you bring them in, you're stuck with them. How do you have a system whereby you have you talked about having people come in on temporary or gigs. You have the laws that don't allow you to just do things temporarily anyhow. So how do we organize ourselves to take advantage of this? For me, the workforce of one has a lot of value addition because you have an array of people with different skills, different attitudes, different drives to be able to, and if you notice around the younger ones, they pull each other up. The focus is around delivery of those values. It's not really about the box I'm sitting in or the job I'm doing. The focus moves to the delivery of that value. So it has a lot of advantage for all organizations, but it's the how we navigate around, how we get this put into a system whereby we can say this organization is a skill-based organization. Most organizations you will see have mixtures because there are those things that we're not very sure of yet. So we're not able to completely let go and become a fully skill-based organization. But once we have some of these things, we would be able to say we can. But partially, a lot of organizations have it in bits and pieces because we do teams, we do project groups, we do teams that deliver value, and we have seen the values they create.
Thank you very much for positioning that for us. And I'm just going to pick on one of the things that you said, which is one about automation. So moving from liberating the work from the jobs requires automation. You know, we've been talking about the future of work and that there are 3 dimensions in the future of work. The work itself, which is becoming increasingly automated. We've got artificial intelligence, robotics, we've got all sorts of technology in place. The second one is the workers. So as you automate and then you free the work, you know, routine jobs, the routine things that we do, then that leaves us with, you know, what humans do, which is about taking decisions, which is about looking at the human elements, the things that a computer can't or the technology cannot dimension for us as people. And then that now enables us to bring in all sorts of people into the organization. So we'll have the people who are core in the organizations, we have the outer people providing responsibility, some support, some sort of support. And so you have different workforce types, you know, within your organization. And then that technology also liberates the place where this work is going to be done, which is about the workplace. So it is very critical that for us to be able to move to skills-based organization, there's a lot that needs to be automated. We cannot afford to continue to use individuals for work that can be automated, and then now move the work that really needs to be done by humans to humans. The second thing you raised that strikes me is when you talked about the verification of skills. So when we talk about the skills-based organization, yes, we can attach skills to the work that needs to be done, but how do I verify that this skill that you say you have, you do have it? Or even to say these are the skills, because some of the challenges that we will have is who's going to define these skills, how will these skills be defined, and are we going to have common terminology for these skills across multiple entities. Which leads us very nicely into the next conversation that we're going to have, which is about the decisions that were going to be made around the work and the people and around skills, and certainly not about jobs. If you're hired as a HR officer, then you're expected to move from HR officer to HR, or HR assistant to HR officer. From HR officer, maybe it is in recruitment, maybe it is in training, maybe it is in compensation. Really not about the kinds of skills that you have built, or the kinds of skills that you have, or the kinds of problems that the organization has, which will require people to solve it. So we will be speaking now to Esther Akinukawe. Esther is the Chief HR Officer of MTN. And in the last conversation that we had during the trend, there were quite a few things that MTN had been doing in that direction. Esther is very, very experienced. She's one of those ones that, when we want to have HR conversations, I like to call Esther, have conversations with Esther, because there's just so much that I can learn, from her. So Esther, you'll be talking to us this morning about using skills rather than jobs to make decisions about the work and the workforce.
Thank you very much, Chizoba. Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. Morning, Joseph, and to all the panel members for setting the tone earlier on. And so the question you've asked me, Chizoba, is how do we leverage skills for decision making? And I think the first thing is, to even identify what skills we're, referring to, that we're talking about. When Dotun spoke and Fatima spoke, both of them talked about liberating the work and the workers from the confines of the jobs, which means that the essence is to, take decisions on people with respect to the skills that they have developed in the course of the job. For us at MTN, and I would like to use my organization as an example, to talk through this. What we have a strategy that maybe some of you might have heard about it, but it is known as Ambition 2025. And the idea of this particular strategy is to, in terms of all of the different things we want to do within our ecosystem, to also identify the key skills that are required to help us deliver on the ambition or on the strategy. And so one of the core things that we have done is to identify about 4,500 jobs across our global footprint. And I meant to say skills across our global footprint. And we have categorized this into 5 key areas, like artificial intelligence, machine learning, cloud, customer value management, digital and software engineering skills. And so in doing this, the idea is to pass our people through skills development in all of these different areas. And then that becomes the basis for assigning and deploying people to different roles and projects within the organization. It also becomes the basis, for rewarding the work that has been done. An example of how we have implemented that is in our IT space, where we're not just using individuals, permanent employees within the organization, but we also have those you refer to as the gig workers within the organization. And when they come in, because it is their skills that we're leveraging, their reward, so decision-making in terms of reward is not a one-size-fits-all. It's not the standard reward package. It is based on the specific skills, what they will be doing for us as an organization. I have had cause to bring in individuals from all over, people who are not even interested in holding a 9-to-5 or an 8-to-5 job. And they have come into the company because of the skills that they possess and that we need in a particular area. And that then becomes the basis for the reward decision that we're taking, or that we take on behalf of those people. It means that they may even earn higher than, whosoever has brought them into the organization or the line manager that they're working with. It doesn't matter. We are paying for the skills. And so this is one of the ways that we have, taken decisions based on skills. Then in terms of career development or career management, it is no longer about, career ladder or career lattice. It's the skills that you are developing. So one of the ways we do that is we identify legacy jobs that need to be eliminated. For instance, in the administrative areas, in customer management areas, where it is not just about customer management, but customer value management. So if you're able to develop your skills beyond merely attending to customers to providing value to the customers, then this becomes a basis for taking decisions with respect to deploying you to that particular role, or even rewarding you for the work that has been done, the performance management appraisals that has also been done. Then when you also look in terms of leadership, development, and succession planning, it's no longer just about developing people for the particular job that has been identified or a legacy job, but for the skills that is required in that particular job. So, which is the reason we said we've identified about 4,500 jobs, but we've categorized them into 5 different areas, and we have set up academies, different academies. So there's a big data analytics academy. You also have an academy, an HR academy that has been established for the HR community who would lead this development, because if we don't know what to do, then we cannot support the organization effectively. Neither can we do effective change management. And so when that is done effectively, it becomes a basis for the decisions that are taken. Even the learning and development, special development programs that we run for our individuals in Ivy League schools is based on skills. We identify the skills that are required, who are the individuals who need to go acquire those particular skills, and then they get nominated to go for those training programs. When they return to the organization, one of the first things they need to do is pick a problem area with the company, which was the reason, for nominating you to such a program in the first instance, and then come together as a cohort, to solve that problem for the organization. When that is done effectively, such individuals get nominated and identified as successors. They also get identified as unique contributors who are differentiated in terms of pay, when the rewards are being administered to the people. And all of these is, taking decisions based on skills in the organization. Then decision-making based on skills is also in terms of reskilling. So I mentioned earlier on that some of the areas that are legacy jobs that we need to do away with are customer management and administrative roles. So part of the decisions we've taken about individuals who are willing and ready to work with us in, getting the reskilling in the organization is train them to be, for instance, AI or bot trainers. So when if you successfully undergo that training, then the next thing is to move such individuals into those higher order jobs that also have, higher order rewards attached to them. So these are the different ways that we have taken decisions based on skills in the company. But it is early days. We've just started the transition into this skills-based organization. I need to be transparent about that. And we have decided to adopt a gradual approach so that, the change can be seamless. And then in addition to that, we can also have a sustainable, program when we take it one step at a time. The other thing is in terms of nominating people, even to agile teams that we have implemented in the organization, different projects in the company. Who are the individuals who get nominated to those programs, whether locally or even globally? They are individuals who have developed additional skills, and we recognize those skills and take, those kinds of decisions in respect of people. And so this really is what we've done thus far. I'm sure I'll be able to provide some other insights depending on the questions that are asked.
Thank you so much for dimensioning this for us. What I hear you say is you have put your foot into the water, and you're not just testing it. You've actually gone into the shallow end of this water, and you're going to walk right through it, but you're going to take one step at a time. It's interesting, the stuff that you've told us around dimensioning the skills. That's the 4,500 skills across the global footprint, and what you're doing around redefining how those skills add value to the organization, and also defining how people will be paid using based on the skills. And you've also shown us your thoughts and then the actions that you're taking around developing people using those academies and trying to make sure, because you're looking into the future of work, because these are the areas where the greatest work growth is going to be in the next 5 to 10 years around AI, machine learning, software engineering, and co. And then you've also spoken to us about career is no longer progressing based on jobs, but will be based on you learn the skill, then we place you in another position or in another role, for you to be able to continue to add value. And I found the leadership development very interesting, where there are gaps, and then we will send you off, to go learn. But most importantly, you come back and you create value out of what you've learned. Thank you very much for dimensioning that for us. And we're going to go quickly into the conversation with Muyiwa. And Muyiwa is going to be talking to us, yes, it's a trend, we need to transition to skills-based. But what happens to organizations that are heavily regulated? What happens to organizations that have very long history? What happens to organizations that are a lot? And what happens to organizations that in many ways, the technology changes will evolve, it's not going to be a revolution. So Muyiwa, like we said, is the group head for human capital management and development. And Muyiwa has been in consulting, so he understands solution provision, and he also understands, not being in a job. So Muyiwa, this morning, you're just going to tag on, from where Esther stopped, to talk to us about how can we build a skills hub, and what does a skills hub mean? How can we build it for organizations, who are thinking about transitioning?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chizoba. And good morning to everyone on the call, the participants, the fellow panel members as well. I'm excited to be here because I've also learned so much from those who have spoken before me. And the beautiful things about being the last speaker is you have the opportunity of adopting what everyone had said, and also then leverage their own examples as well. So I apologize up front to all the participants in case I take one or two examples that will be already shared by the other panel members. I think that should be allowed because we are all learning together. Key question really. Joseph already said the context, so I won't go back and listen to the details of job formation and the rest of it. And the question now is, how do we operationalize this? It sounds very bold. So again, is it a big concept? How do we bring this? How do we domesticate it? And I like the example shared by Exa. So where they've already started taking and some form of steps. And Chizoba in her earlier remarks also mentioned the fact that one organization where this can be, not even can be, this is already fully in operation, is consulting. I've had the opportunity of being in consulting. Consulting works that they are not structured by jobs. They are structured essentially by skills. For every job that exists, and again, leveraging the definition of job, as stated by Joseph earlier. So you have it as a task or a piece of work, for which an individual gets paid and limited. So for that job to be successfully done, you needed that to be some set of skills to be able to deliver on that job. So there is no job or there is no task that can get done, all by itself without ensuring that you have some skills that you are deploying and able to do this. So in one way or the other, so we have the job defined based on our traditional knowledge of the way organizations are structured, or we have operating model structured around jobs. But ultimately, the inherent skill sets are required a little bit to deliver on that job. I think we need to keep that at least in one block. So overall, how do we operationalize this? I'm a practical HR person. So the question is, if there is any concept today in HR that we cannot seamlessly implement across, then it sits in the realms of research. It seems in the realms of academics. But again, interesting bit is the fact that this is extremely, operational, or it's implementable. And we can also see that in organizations, we are already taking some kind of, baby steps that is in delivering on this. And I give you an example. Some organizations like mine also already have some projects, some jobs that we do as projects in form of tasks without necessarily having an ability to codify them as jobs. So, and we have, gig workers, flexi staff, off balance sheets, employees that will be doing some of these jobs. These jobs are important, but we didn't define them as jobs. So they probably come in and define them as projects. And you have people with relevant skill sets and able to define them. So how do we get people here? We don't define them, say, come do XYZ job, but we define the relevance and of that task and look at the needed skills and to deliver that job. Now to the question around operationalization and of this concept is starting a little bit with the creation or building of a skills up, and which I like to call skills bank. And what does that mean really is the fact that, because that's actually the engine room for the implementation of skills-based organizational approach and before, operating model. You need to ensure that you have, the entire skills required a little bit to define, to deliver successfully across a little bit the entire organization, and which you then need to put at least in a big basket that you call a hub. So that needs to be first and foremost be defined. And in that instance, you have a shared, skills-based talent philosophy, where you are not only defining and those tasks by job, or having to codify them and be under different boxes, and which we call structure by jobs, but you are looking at the required skills and to be able to successfully deliver on those jobs, and you put them at least in a big basket. Does that exist currently, at least in some organizations? I am not sure, but again, are we taking a little bit steps in that direction? Certainly, yes. And we can also leverage a little bit from what the example that Exta gave, at MTN. So once that is first and foremost defined, and that is the foundation, defining it a little bit is usually very difficult, because this is not HR that is sitting a little bit and saying, let's go and create it. And I like a little bit what Joseph said, at least in setting the context a little bit for this engagement, that it's easy for us a little bit to rub minds, share insights among HR professionals, leaders, and the rest of them. But don't forget, your key stakeholders are actually the business. So you have to take this and go and sell a little bit to the executive leadership, who probably be wondering, how does this add a little bit to the bottom line? So again, if you are not able to simplify this a little bit in naira and kobo, or whatever currency a little bit that you are putting on the table, and how can help a little bit that drive efficiency, which will ultimately impact productivity and profitability of the institution, you can be rest assured that it will be dead on arrival. So that is the reason why, as HR leaders, some of these concepts, we must be able to tie them into the currency and say to the organization, if you deploy this concept, this is how much will be helping the organization to serve, or this is how much value that will be created for the organization, which will then impact a little bit the bottom line and the rest of it. So that is number one, a little bit to start with. So after creating this, looking at identifying a little bit the skills required a little bit for the entire institution, and if you cut across various functions that you currently have now, in that organization, then the next thing is to clearly define the governance around this, and which is also another big responsibility. I mentioned earlier that I'm a practical HR person. So it's good for us a little bit to discuss all of the details and all of that. But when you take these into your workspace, how sure it to be acceptable a little bit to the leadership? Because the leadership a little bit that we then view it is they are looking at the impact that is in the bottom line. I think I mentioned that a couple of times. So governance is around ownership of this concept. So you are doing transformation, you are transitioning a little bit from job-based a little bit to skills-based, great. So then who owns that responsibility, or who owns that up, for instance? Now you mentioned the fact that they're going to create a little bit of skills up. So who becomes the owner of that skills up? And the question now is, should it be owned by HR or it should be owned by the line? So if you say it should be owned by HR, does HR define the skills required a little bit to successfully deliver tasks across the various functions? Or it should be co-owned a little bit by both parties? My own recommendation really is to the fact that the guardrail, and I like to use the word and be, said and mentioned earlier by Fatima. HR will be responsible for defining the guardrail. So the framework should be defined a little by HR. So the admin responsibility in terms of the do and don'ts and all of those ones a little bit should be set up a little by HR, where you then get a little bit the involvement of the business, of the line, in terms of identification of relevant skills that will to successfully deliver on task. If you do not co-own it, it's dangerous a little bit to the institution that wants to practice this. And again, we've seen the benefit during the course of this engagement, so no doubt about that. But for us a little bit to then say we want to successfully transition our institution a little bit into skills-based organization model, then it's then important that there must be, buy-in a little bit from the line, who will then commit a little to the process 100% by identifying the skills required, whilst a little bit that guardrail a little bit set a little by HR. The next point that I also want to leave us with a little bit is the lingua franca, for the skills-based a little bit, model, because it will no longer be jobs. Because what we are saying, in this concept really is around, let's deprioritize jobs and let's elevate skills. Because there is no skills, and there is no job without skills. There is no execution of tasks without the skills inherent, at least in those jobs, that will then help you to successfully deliver on those tasks. And that's actually become the lingua franca in this instance, where we then begin to talk more about the skills requirement. The question now is that for organizations, we have a little bit, competency catalog and the rest of them, but we now need to do a bit more, much more than what we currently have, by transitioning this into the, the skills taxonomy, which we then codify skills required and be across various institutions. I listened to Esther talk about 4,000 plus skills identified. The question is that she wouldn't have done it a little bit with her own team alone. I'm very certain about that. And again, it means that the entire institution must sign up a little to that project, where everyone then says, you know what, a little bit for us that is successfully deliver in this function, here are the number of skills required, the rest of them. And you then begin a little to build capacity around that, such that no one is then looking into jobs. However, we're now looking more at this into the skills required. Maybe before I stop, and hand over back a little bit to Chisholm, how do we ensure that we are able to make good progress around this? There is a place to start, and we can also start soon. And I also take that back a little bit to what Joseph said earlier. We can actually look at the various talent practices that currently exist in our organization, because don't try to boil the ocean and say, oh, let's deploy this across the entire institution. For an institution a little bit like mine that is heavily unionized, you have a number of, a number of stakeholders a little bit to contend with a little bit when you want to deploy that at scale. And I have to be honest with you, because some of those things a little bit you underestimate a little once you get into the middle of implementation, then you realize that you probably it would have been better for you a little bit to manage stakeholders and get them a little to be on board. So in this instance, I'll be then to start small. Look at some of the practices that you have around talent management and deploy them. For instance, you can look at your learning and development, for instance, and say, okay, I am not, upskilling a little bit for jobs, but I'm upskilling based a little bit on the skills required a little bit to do a little bit those tasks. Then you start deploying a little bit interventions, start deploying a little bit initiatives around how to ensure that you are upskilling people to be able to successfully deliver tasks as it has been defined, not necessarily now saying you are building capacity around the jobs that people do. The other speakers that we had mentioned the fact that, look, once we create those boxes that we call log structure, it just generally fits people as into a particular spectrum, and it limits your thinking in a way and say, my name is this, I'm an HR officer, and you don't even think about the fact that the abundance of other skill sets that you currently have that can be deployed to other part of the institution. The second bit I also want to leave us with, creating a decentralized skills. I think I had mentioned that I don't need to go back again and look at, and repeat that as well. And how do we then ensure that we deploy these within the institution? To my mind, I want to, echo the optimism of Fatima that this is doable. It's not a concept that will remain in the realms and be in the realm of rhetorics and academia. It's clearly something that HR leaders should begin to take the lead in taking these to our various institutions beyond consulting where it's already operational. However, I don't think we can approach it wholeheartedly from start to finish, but we need to ensure that we are start by taking the baby steps in terms of the deployment, and also ensure that we get all of the stakeholders within our institutions to be on board with us. After this session, I do not expect that we get into our organization and say, all of these jobs we ended them or ban this job. You can be rest assured that you are going to get and you are going to meet very stiff resistance. Yeah. So what it means is that sell the benefit a little bit to the leadership, and now let's begin to look at the skills. Once institutional leadership can see the value from this concept, you will get that support at the leadership level. That helps you to break through, that barriers that you find, because you are going to meet that resistance, particularly from other businesses that have enjoyed the custom of that big title, the XYZ and all of that. And when the person looks at the structure, he sees a whole lot of troop of armies, reporting and listening to that function without necessarily, unpacking it. Because what we're basically saying is that let's unpack this. It's not a revolution, I agree, but it's evolution. But HR leaders must apply wisdom to be able to drive through the implementation. I will stop here. Thank you very much, Isabel.
Thank you very much, Muyiwa, for such a great pulling together of your thoughts around the hub. And some of the things that you have told us this morning is, we need to start looking at projects. If we think of jobs as project and task, without codifying them as a job, how can we unpack those projects and tasks that needs to be done? You've also told us that, this has to work, is when you then have both employees on the balance sheet and off balance sheet. The off-balance sheet ones are easier to deal with because there is a task that they need to do. You've also told us that we must have a philosophy to codify the skills that we require to successfully deliver in our organizations, and we must curate those skills. Then you brought in, some of the things that we need to think about. We need to think about the governance. It's not just say we want to be a skills-based organization. Who is going to be responsible for the curation of these skills, the definition of these skills, and the management of the skills? And like all of us have been saying, the guardrails have to be provided by somebody, and you are recommending that human resources should provide the guardrail. You've also raised the issue about the lingua franca for the skills. Are we going to share this lingua franca across sectors or across, is it going to be a global lingua franca in terms of skills, or is it still going to be organization specific? So we need to find a way of communicating what would those skills sound like and what would they look like. But you've also encouraged us that we should start small, even if it is from training. Start training people for broader, impact. Train them, beyond the box we have put them, which is their job, so that they are picking up skills that, will be useful to the organization. And tomorrow, if you decide, to move maybe your recruitment or to move something else, at least you have the basis, you would have tested out some of those skills. And then how do we deploy this to institutions that have multiple stakeholders with entrenched interest in the current status quo. What we can see as human resources, sometimes the organization cannot see it. How do we carry them along? And then also, how do we evaluate our organizations to make sure that our organizations, there is some readiness for some of the things. And like he said, please do not leave this call and go to your MD and say, you know what, from tomorrow, we are skills-based organization. You may be looking for another job while the MD is looking for a new HR person. So thank you very much for your initial thoughts on this and your perspective, which you have brought to bear. We have questions. We will take those questions later. However, we've just got, I think we've only got 15 minutes or 10 minutes to be able to do a quick please through. And so I'm just going to start with Fatima so that we can also try and release you, because we know that you've got a heavy day ahead of you today. So Fatima, can you just talk to us, talk to the participants in terms of the workforce of one or any part of these principles that we have spoken about? What are the things that we have to, especially for traditional organizations, what do you think, are some of the things that we can do to help our organizations head in this direction? If you can just do it in 3 minutes for us.
Thank you very much. I think basically the most important one is culture. We need to open our minds to know that things can change. Look at when you were all talking about skills and whatever, skills change every single day. AI comes, machine learning, all these things are coming at the speed of lightning, especially for the generations that are coming into the workplace. So I think for the traditional older HR professionals, we need to open our minds. We need to be able to see changes and see how we can key in and create those governance and guardrails that we talked about earlier. Once we're able to break down that culture, we take away that sense of fear for staff, for management, for whoever, because at the end of the day, we're looking for where we can add value in terms of profitability, efficiency, higher outputs, and so on and so forth. And we can only do that if we have people who are putting their innovation, putting their hearts in, and they can only do that if they're satisfied. And they can only be satisfied if they have the freedom to operate, to use all their skills, to be able to bring in their various skills across to do that. So for me, if you break down that culture, you make people from both, mostly around our generations, the management, and that you would be able to have a breakthrough into breaking down this and unpacking it like Muyiwa has said, unpacking it into pieces for us to be able to get the value addition in it. It's all about breaking down that culture and having that upskilling and improving ourselves and giving people room to continuously improve on their skills and learn new ones, be it within participating in projects, be it in the classroom or any other activity that allows them to expand their skills, because the world is expanding, it's changing. Skills, you can use your skills in anywhere, so you should be able to be flexible and be able to add value. I think that is basically for me what should be done to be able to achieve this. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this summary. It's one, we've got to open our mind for all of us who are, practitioners. And as we open our mind as HR practitioners, is then now to be able to start the conversations with the organization and also to start building that culture of change and that culture of openness in our organizations to be able to absorb the changes that are going on in our environment, for us to be able to start the conversation internally about what we need to do. And you did say that this is about people. And if this is about people, it's about their engagement. We're trying to drive their commitment. And if we're going to drive their commitment, then allow the whole person to come to work. For those of us who are Generation X, and even worse for the baby boomers, is the fact that we were not allowed to bring our whole person to work. So we brought the job person to work and then left all the other parts of us because we were only recognized for our jobs and not for our skills. Thank you very much. Dotun, what would you recommend to organizations who want to start looking at fractionalization of jobs, liberating the work from the job, what kinds of things should they look at, you know, in terms of that area?
Thank you very much again, Chizoba. And I must say that, look, a lot have been discussed here today, and I'm quite, you know, excited. And I also want to say that I'm quite pleased that every of the discussants have come to terms with the fact that, look, this is the way to go, and which is quite exciting. The next question is, what are we going to tell our business? What are we going to tell the organization around us? And for professionals who are here, and I think Muyiwa has said so much about that. We have agreed that, look, it's not going to be revolutionary. It's going to be true evolution. And I also want to say that there's a way as HR professionals or practitioners can ensure as an individual, you know, at leadership level, that you can sneak this into your system, into your organization, and ensure that it works. One of the tactics, or what, let me say the strategy, that I've been able to deploy around here, which of course I'm still pushing, is that number one, you've got to let your management, you know, appreciate the fact that, look, that's the way to go. And I think a lot have been said about that. You've got to be able to convince your leadership team, your executive team, on the need to transition. And in doing that, they've got to be able to see the value that you are going to bring on the table. And as yourself, as an individual, in my own opinion, I think we should, first of all, start training ourselves on how we can identify skills that, you know, that are key for our organizations to grow. I have read a lot about DDI, that's the Development Dimension International, whose responsibility have been on developing new skills. And I think, you know, one of the panelists also mentioned that skills, I think is Fatima, who said that skills change on regular and daily basis. So it's not going to be easy, as it were, but we have to be very strategic at the same time. We also have to be scientific about it. Scientific in the sense that we have to take a study to first of all understand and know what are those competencies and skills that are required from our organization, for our organization to survive in the future. Just as we have all agreed here, that by our standard, we don't know what's going to, you know, what's going to come upon us tomorrow. Just as COVID-19 just came, sneaked in, and of course that brought so much of agility from organizations and so on and so forth. So for me, what I will advise organizations to do is that it's an area that we need to look seriously into. And in doing that, we have a big role to play as HR, you know, practitioners or HR leaders. And doing that, we've got to be able to, we also have to be equipped, strongly equipped on how to identify skills. Because some of the questions that I just read in the chat, I think dwells more about that. We have to equip ourselves, we have to develop ourselves, we have to build ourselves to be able to identify those skills that are relevant. And in view of the fact that all of those things are very dynamic, so it's not an area that we have to keep quiet on. It's not an area we have to be silent on. We have to keep developing ourselves, keep growing ourselves. And when you are strong enough, it becomes easier for you to be able to convince your organization on the way you should go and train your team on the ability. And so train your team on how they will be able to identify some of these skills. But sincerely, it has to be entrenched in our mission statement. It has to be entrenched in our strategy. It has to be organized and also has to be strategically understood by the leadership team. And there has to be acceptability. If that is not done, it's going to be difficult for us to be able to push this through the organization, as it were.
Okay, thank you very, very much. What we are hearing from you is we've got to be scientific about the way we go through this. And we will start, first of all, by building our knowledge in this area. If we build our knowledge in this area, then it helps us to look at the studies or the people who can help us. You've mentioned people like DDI in terms of the skills definition. You've also mentioned things around the developments that we have to have as individuals. And then, we've also need to start training the people who are going to help to define these skills that we require in the organizations. One of the things I would like to add at this point is, if people have looked at the OECD the future of jobs, the report from 2023, there's a whole list of skills that they think are going to be critical in the next 5 years, and skills that are going to almost like not be required in organizations in the next 5 years. So as HR people, we've also got to read extensively, look at a lot of reports, listen to all the trends. The consulting companies come up with the trends. Deloitte has been very strong in the human capital trend. And I think the human capital 2024 trend is almost out. I saw snippets of the conversations that they had with people. So thank you very much for that. I'm just going to stop for a moment for us to give you, the polls that we did. From the polls that we did, there were 4 categories of responses from the people who responded on it. Thank you very much. I think after the session, the party after party, will still open it up so that other people can respond to it. We've got 4 categories. Those who are strongly aligned. There's a significant portion of our respondents that have said that their organizations are well on their way to operate under a skills-based approach. And they highlight practices like project-based deployment based on skills and focus on skills development and talent mobility within the organization. There are organizations that are partially aligned. Some organizations have taken steps towards the SBOs. They have internal talent marketplace, skills-based training, and encourages skill development. But they acknowledge that there's a gap between their current state and a fully implemented SBO state. We have organizations that are not aligned. These respondents have said that their organizations are currently not practicing SBO. They rely heavily on job-based structures, and they see a need for significant changes to achieve their objective. And then a few of the respondents were unsure about their alignment and highlighted that it depends on the specific department or function within their organization. So at least, this is a mix of the different kinds of people who are listening to this conversation. And so I would like Muyiwa to please just help us in, what do you see as, for the Nigerian sector, what do you see as the things that will hold us back from heading in this direction? You had touched on some of it, but looking at the Nigerian context completely, just give us a few things that you think will hold us back. And then in the course of it, if you can also just suggest a few things that people can do.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Isola, for that question. I think the biggest drawback I see is the mindset of even the HR people themselves. But interestingly, based on the poll result that you read out, so it clearly shows that we are seeing a lot more people that favorably disposed to this new concept. Sometimes you might think that technology might be the biggest interest, but not in this instance. Today, AI is available to help us, extract relevant, skill sets, inherent, and it's in various jobs that we do. It's just a matter of transposing those things into an algorithm. So by the time you see that similar shapes or types, feature before the AI says, yes, this person has got these skills or not. But when you look at it within the HR space itself, that shift needs to happen. And it means that as HR leaders, we need to begin to look at the mindset and look at the possibility and the bright side and the value that XBO brings at the table, way better than the traditional, job-based and the operating model. I think that is extremely critical. Number two, and which is, what I've mentioned earlier, is around the stakeholder management. And depending on this organization, you have different layers of stakeholders. You can wake up one day and say you want to introduce this new concept, and you don't get some pushback, particularly from the line. So depending a little bit on the maturity level of the institution, so you have responsibility to ensure that you carefully manage and be of various stakeholders. And in managing these stakeholders, it's not about sitting them down and say, please, I beg you, support this initiative and all of that. But you have to sell them the value. So once they begin to see the value, and you then bring them on board a little bit to also be part of that value driver, then you get a little bit of support a little bit from such people. Then you can then implement seamlessly. But clearly, you will find that, serious roadblocks, where even understanding the concept, breaking down the concept and is into relatable, minute form, usually very difficult a little bit for business people. And my apologies a little bit if you have business people that will be here in attendance, because oftentimes they want to look at, they are very impatient a little bit for profitability. So any investment a little bit that will not yield immediate profit, a little bit, they are not sure that they have that patience a little to begin to go through the entire route. And which is the responsibility for HR leaders to then ensure that, look, we are able to break this down to say, here is the value that will be accrued a little bit to the bank or to the institution and be regardless, to the institution over a period of time. Once that a little bit is sorted, then you can then see the support a little bit from the stakeholders. But again, one of the biggest stakeholders as well is even the workforce themselves. I did mention earlier that I came a little bit from, an environment, a unionized environment, for instance. So where you have large number of your workforce and you are a member of the union, and the way union behave generally. So you also need to ensure that you cultivate them, differently. You need to ensure that you speak to them, you appeal to their conscience, and you also set them the benefit. Because the first thing that we, pull a trigger for them is to say, are you sure this will not result into redundancy? They don't want to hear that. So if you get into that space and you're not able to communicate at least the language that the union can connect with, it will be dead on arrival, even if you get the leadership support on your back. So it's also then important to ensure that you have that. But the biggest stakeholder again is actually government agency. And I say this without any fear of confrontation, because if you have any initiative that you deploy, depending on the size and the systemic importance of the institution, you can even get reported to some government agency responsible for supervising functions there. So it means that for us as HR leaders, we also have that responsibility to bring these to government, government agencies that have that responsibility, so that they can really be on board. So that extent, they can then also support and be that drive, from that perspective. But overall, I share the optimism that is the way to go. And I also want to encourage the HR leaders to ensure that they go through the rigor so that we can make these at least implementable in our respective organizations. I will stop there. Thank you very much, Chizo.
In fact, thank you very much, Muyiwa, for bringing regulators into this conversation. I remember as HR director in Central Bank, the fight that I had to go internally over the competency framework for the financial services sector. It wasn't really a competency framework. It was an approved person's regime, doing the qualifications, certifications that you require for different positions. And having brought this in, it's going to be a major difficulty for organizations, because if the regulator does not understand and is still keeping to jobs, then how can you be talking about, skills? So thanks for reminding us that it's about mindset, it's about the stakeholders, and you've taken some critical stakeholders, the workforce itself, because beyond the union is the workforce itself. If they don't understand and think it's going to lead to redundancy, then they will stoke up, and push the unions, into a fight mode. And then also the line, line drive for profitability and not looking in terms of the long-term impact, and then also the regulators. Esther, just your final words to us. Somebody is asking, and that's the question that we'd like to ask you. As you are moving in this direction, what are the pain points?
Okay.
What are
Thank
the pain
you.
that we need to watch out for?
Oscar has alluded to some of those pain points in terms of how you deal with the union, even the employees themselves, because for a lot of employees, it might be a case of redundancy. Would this lead to redundancy? Even how to identify the skills themselves. So we've talked about, developing a skills hub, identifying the skills for the future, 5 to 10 years from now. How do you really narrow down to identifying the critical skills? It can be a really harrowing, experience if you're not equipped with the right competencies to be able to do it internally. And that's also why you have, the likes of Deloitte and the consulting organizations who can support in that respect. It is also a time-consuming process. So you need to ask questions with respect to whether you want to go in this direction or not. Have a clear strategy and, ask your why. Why do I want to go in this direction? Why do we need to transition into a skills-based organization? Is it because it is now the new fad? Or are there real advantages that we can take, advantage of in our organization? So when all that is asked and you have the, right questions to that, to the reason you're going in that direction, then even though the process is going to be a bit tedious, it will be worth the while. It could also require a cultural shift because, organizational cultures differ. If it's a traditional organization where it's all been about jobs, it's all been about, legacy jobs, to then suddenly decide as an organization to transition into skills-based means that there is some culture that needs to be contended with. And this is also where the leadership team is important. The role of the leader, starting from the CEO of the organization, who would really lend support to going in that direction. And of course, data management challenges as well. How do you get the data? How do you assess for the skills? And all the different challenges that you could face in the process of going in this direction. So I would suggest that providing incentives, for people in the organization could really encourage people to adopt and embrace the skills-based approach, and also reduce the pain points that you may have in the company. Tax incentives, tax credits have been, there was a time I was listening to, I think the Prime Minister of Singapore, who was talking about different skills that they want not just people in specific sectors, but generally people within Singapore, the citizens of Singapore, to learn into the next 5 years, and then they would have tax credits to that effect. Maybe as a country, our governments, when you are talking about stakeholders, our governments may also think about introducing such incentives. And within organizations as well, think of introducing incentives in terms of scholarships, in terms of rewards that would make people embrace, the skills-based approach, which is the future, and it is doable, like the other panelists have said, is really the right way to go. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes?
Yeah, just one point.
Please go ahead, Dr. Yeah.
I'm very sorry about this. I just noticed that to a large extent, our discussion has always been built around the organization.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a very big gap that I have noticed, and that's the fact that you bring in new set of employees, young graduates, into your organization, and you expect some of these skills. Sometimes you are flat on them, and probably you have to, put in so much effort to build them up to fit into your organization. The aspect of what the government is doing with respect to the curriculum, academic curriculums, is an area that we also need to look at. Okay, because to a large extent, and I think a lot of the participants here, or probably the panelists will agree with me, that our academic system is actually not, developing students for organizations or for industry or for businesses. So I wouldn't know what the approach will look like, but it's also very important that right from school, we begin to build these skills in our people, all right, and see how they're going to be relevant in organization of the present and of course of the future. Just my own contribution.
Thank you very much for raising that. And Dr. I will come back to that, with Esther. Esther, somebody says that thank you very much for sharing those pain points, that it is exactly some of the things that they think that they are going to have to grapple with. And I see a suggestion here about being super sensitive. We've got to be culturally sensitive to manage this change from hierarchical and job-based system to a skills-based approach. And Chris Nwachukwu will meet him in the party after party to say that they are moving towards skills pools and disciplines, and trying to operationalize that as their first step towards the skills-based organization. So, Dr. you raised an important point, and that important point is where does degrees and qualifications fit into the skills-based organization? And, for people who have been following all the conversations with Google and all the technology companies say that you don't need degrees, it appears that, as we move towards the skills-based organization, the pure or the unadulterated SBOs will boil this down to the skills. And then it is about, the certifications or some accreditation that you receive for particular skills areas and no longer our degrees. Just like most of our organizations, we have these jobs and we don't prune jobs on a yearly basis to say, is this job still relevant? And look over the next 5 years, how many jobs are we going to retire? How many jobs are we going to bring in? So it's the same thing with our degrees. There are many degrees that you will be asking yourself, what are we doing this degree? Please don't be upset over what I'm about to say. Mass communication, I don't understand it, okay? Because communication has moved, tremendously. And do we still talk about mass communication? Then we still have people studying English. It's not an indictment on those degrees, but we will look in most countries and see the shifts that have been made in terms of the qualifications that people are getting and the kinds of courses that people are studying. So even us as a country, we need to sit down and do that pruning. And that's why Muyiwa was saying that government agencies, do they understand this? Do they understand these trends? Do they understand where the world is going? And the truth of the matter is that if we do nothing, we will have a problem. Because this is driven both by technology and what we call the generational shifts. Okay, so the alphas who are going to come into the workforce in the next couple of years, we're going to have problems with them because their whole life has been built around their instant 2 minutes, their noodle people, the expectation, they want it today. There's nothing like delayed gratification. So we're going to have problems with managing the Gen Zs and the Generation Alpha in our organizations. And we need to be ready. If not, they are not going to come to our organizations. They will only come to our organizations because maybe they need to earn some money. And once they've got the organization that they want to go for, they are out of our way. So there is a real serious implication for us. We won't be in the workforce. I'm not going to be in the workforce in the next 10 years, but over the next 10 years, I'm sure that these things will become commonplace. I'm sure in the 1800s, when they started defining jobs, it was a major shakeup, it was a major breaking of tables. And now we're talking the skills-based organizations. But of course, we're preaching to the converted, we're preaching to the choir. And so we will take a break now and look at another poll. We are going to take another poll in terms of what we're going to do post this session, and then we will come in with the questions that the participants would like to ask the panelists. So what's our poll, Chike? So please go to menti.com and the code is 27468981, or you scan the QR code to participate. And so the question today is, how do you plan to apply the insights that has been discussed today within your organization to facilitate the beginning of your transition to a skills-based organization? And so it may be like Muyiwa said, you could start with training. It could be like Fatima said, even just start having the conversation and start building the skills of people. Just also the way Dr. has recommended, HR, start building your knowledge. And like as Esther has told us, start small, start small. Start by taking a look at the organization, what's working and what's not working. So please, can we put up that poll again so that people just put it up for just 1 more minute so that we are sure that, so it's menti.com 27468981, menti.com 27468981. Please continue to put in your responses, so that at least we have an idea. And we do have resources that we're going to share with you at the end of this session. And there will be other conversations that we're going to be having. Deloitte is going to be talking to you about the quarterly conversations that we're going to be having about this. So please, let's quickly put in 27468981 menti.com. So on that note, let's go to the questions that are being asked of our panelists. And there are just a few questions. And those questions from our participants, the first question is, as HR managers, how do we ensure that candidates are not screened out of job openings when using screening tools that cannot assess the various skills the candidates may possess? So I think I'll throw that question to Muyiwa.
All right, thank you very much. Very brilliant question. Those biases exist. We need to be honest with ourselves. You talk about deployment of AI, machine learning and the rest of them, and it's helping to take decisions and be as to the relevance as well as suitability of candidates, particularly from the CV perspective, that is the resume perspective. The way it works is that, and that's the reason why I said the context around the biases that exist. So an algorithm is developed and is based on repetitiveness and of those experiences that have been captured and made by the AI, by technology, whatever tool that you are deploying. So the question is, if you say, and I just want to give an example. So an HR manager. So we see an HR manager performs XYZ functions. And on that basis, there are certain skills that be inherent in those functions that before that person can then successfully perform those jobs. If you throw in a little bit those skills, or you throw in a little bit of CV, so it is assumed based on the algorithm developed that such individuals will have those skill sets. And again, a number of us, and the way we've structured our CV, like now, it's essentially based around the experiences, job related and all of that. To a large degree, you could find high level of precision in the decision taken by technology or by the tool that you develop. You deployed. However, where you do not have those buzz definitive, terminologies that the technology that is being deployed is familiar with, it becomes very difficult. And that I believe is the question that will be raised by the individual. So what is the solution to this instance, for instance? To this situation? Should you then recommend that it be the manual, routine checks and be by individual? Maybe not. So the responsibility and the beholds on individual to ensure that, look, you have a CV that adequately captured and your experience, as well as the skills and the sets, that you have, such that it becomes very readable, relatable a little bit to the tool that is being used. But clearly, you cannot eliminate a little bit those biases 100%, particularly depending on how individuals are structured a little bit their CV, because it's machine. And so if machine a little bit cannot read clearly, based a little bit on what has been stored at this algorithm, and which is just a clear filing process, because it's in a repetitive manner that the system will then recognize that, oh yes, when I see this, then I know that this person has got an XYZ skill set. But if I don't say it, then it shows the absence a little bit of those skill set. So the individual then have responsibility to ensure that, look, you have to capture your resume in such a manner that become very readable a little bit to the tool that's being deployed. That would be my recommendation to that. But can it be eliminated 100%? I tell you, it cannot be eliminated 100%. That's those biases can be eliminated 100%. But should you then have human interventions where you then have people that begin to review the CVs and all of that? That's already gone in the Stone Age. So you cannot expect that be people to begin to interact with thousands of responses that be to be able to, to do or make decisions as to the shortlisting or the relevance or suitability of individual, based on the skill sets or the jobs that you have identified. So that would be my response to that question.
Okay, and we also need to add that, some of these tools are cultural, and we also, some of these tools are cultural, and we also need to, one is to make sure that our tools are also not biased against skills based. So the recruitment tools that we're going to use will need to align. Now let's go to the next one. In moving from JDs to competencies, how do we reflect this in the final document for the candidate that is in their employment contract? Esther, can you give us an insight into that quickly?
Okay, so this is basically having the competencies that are required, the skills that are required in a document that is shared. However, you need to be mindful of the fact that these skills are not static, they change. So starting out, joining the organization, you may have a document that shows the skills that are required, the competencies, you have it. But as you progress in the organization, it will be new skills that are required. So do not be fixated on whatever you joined the organization with. That's the quickest response I can give to that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Esther. Somebody's asked, public sector context, can you suggest strategies that can be adopted to have a balance of job-based and skill-based organization in a public sector organization? And so I'm throwing that to Fatima.
Thank you very much, Chizoba. It's longer with the public sector companies, except maybe some of the MDAs that have started embracing the modernity. In the real ministry spaces and the rest of it, it's a little bit more difficult because it takes longer. But I know that a lot of them are automating. And it's actually also in those spaces have become a practice where to achieve something, you set up groups, you set up teams. So in a way, that has also started happening. But I think it was Dotun that talked, Muyiwa that talked about continuous engagement of the stakeholders and trying to show the value addition to whoever. Because even the ministers, the PAMSECs, everybody is signing what they are calling performance management documents with the president, the minister, and so on and so forth. So they are expected to deliver certain things or even have an evidence that they have done something. So because of that, there's some sort of value that you have to show. So if you are doing these activities, if you do them in that format, it shows that you can actually achieve that. But it is very traditional, very hierarchical, very, will I say, egocentric in terms of the hierarchy as described by. So it's a little bit difficult, but it is not like I always say, it's not that it cannot be done. It's just to show the value addition show the agility, show how much can be done. It can be done. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for wrapping that up for us. So we have Dotu. Somebody's asking that as a consultant, how do we address the fear that most organizations have that if they train people with skills, they end up leaving? And this happens most times because they don't know how to maximize their potential once they train them due to the departmental nature of organizations. What are your thoughts and recommendations?
Well, thank you very much, Isabel. And I think it's Jack Welch that said it. That look, you train your employees as if you are going to lose them, and engage them as if they will never leave you. We've got to be convincing enough, to be able to let our employees know that moving from the job to a skills-based organization should not be a threat. And also, we also need to begin to develop our people. It's got to be an holistic project. Holistic in the sense that, okay, fine, this is the way we are going. Strategically, we are moving from this to this. And on the strength of that, we have a responsibility as an organization, to now begin to develop our people along the skills that are required within the organization. So, like we have rightly said, it's a journey. We are transiting. And if we are transiting, we need to carry our people along. So by our standard, nobody should have that fear. Okay, so long as the organization keys into it and it's a strategic decision that this is the way we are going, and it's reflected in all the tools that we're going to be requiring, both in hiring and of course in people development or in performance management and all of that. We've got to be able to carry our people along. So one very critical way for us to allay the fear of people is to let them know that, look, people are not going to lose their jobs. It's just that we're migrating, we are moving, we are transiting. And as much as possible, whatever we can do to bring our people along in terms of developing them, building up the skills that are required for the growth of the organization, then it becomes critical for us to do that. So it's not going to be a day's assignment, it's not going to be a year's assignment, 2 years assignment, or 5 years assignment. It's a migration. And everybody has to be carried along. So I don't see why, employees should be afraid, why organizations should be afraid. But it depends on our ability to be able to convince the organization that this is the way we should go. And so long as we are going that way, we need to carry everybody around. So the change management process is very critical for us, and we must be able to manage it properly.
So thank you very much. And I'd like to use this opportunity to thank all our panel members for providing great insights. All the comments from everyone keep saying, the panel has been great, providing a lot of information that this has been very fulfilling. So I'd like to thank all the panel members for joining us and for staying throughout, this conversation and providing very deep insights. So thank you very much. My last question will go to Joseph, and then straight from there, so that we can wrap up this part of the conversation. Other questions on the platform, we will be answering immediately after we close this session, because people have to get back into their offices. So Joseph, our final question to you will be, how can HR manage and ensure that there are no misconceptions surrounding the organization moving to a skills-based one? Because organizations may start to think of reducing jobs, since we are promoting the jobs to be project and task-based, which is a time-based organization. I see a risk of reduction of the workforce in the nearest future if the concept is not well defined. I think it's a great question for you, and it's a great way of wrapping up this session, this part of the conversations. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you to all the 400 people who joined us at some point on this call, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Chizoba. But before I answer that question, I think there are two other questions I probably want to just speak to quite quickly. One, of course, I think should go to Fatima. Fatima, that question was directed to you, or that to you rather. So I'm going to just leave that for you to answer. But I think the one that was directed at Deloitte, basically, what someone was talking about what we call the RPL. RPL, which is, reporting prior learning, right? And the question was, where the organizations are using that today in Nigeria. I can't say specifically whether we have organizations using, but I will tell you in terms of the, so let me tell you what has happened. So you have organizations basically who have proprietary RPL tools or framework that they use, okay? You have organizations who probably have decided to buy off the shelf. You have quite a number, 450 cells, 8-fold AI, 365 talent, Gloat, a couple of them out there. But what, it's important is in terms of whether you're using proprietary tool or whether you're using, an off-the-shelf solution is for you to be able to actually deploy it appropriately. And what does it do? Basically, it's a tool or a framework that helps to recognize talent or recognize skills rather, of people and then give them credit, right, for those skills and talents. So over time, you can have, and that speaks to what we all said earlier, so how do we build a skills hub, basically. So that's the response to that. Now, for I think for Fatima, I think the question basically was, I hope I can quickly go through that so that we don't, we can take that question. It's about the fact that there's some work done by NNPC on competency in 2012 to 2017 or thereabout. And the question is, how are you using that? Where are you on that? So it was from, I think, Musa Rabiu, thereabout.
Oh, thank you so much, Joseph. That's a good one. And thank you, Musa, for asking that. Hitherto our transition into a limited liability company, we were actually an operator and as well as a regulator. So with the change, we are now operating in the energy space. So not only oil and gas, we're exploring other energy space. So our value chain has expanded and we have other things that we're doing in that space. So that job has been there, but it is being refreshed to reflect who we are now and what skills we want, what the competencies we require, the new competencies we require to be able to achieve and play in that value chain. So actually it's gone very far. We've done a lot of mapping in, as described by Esther. We have also done a little bit of mapping around what is still around the jobs, the competencies required to deliver on certain things. And the skill pool based system, we've set up skill pools that are going to help us to build that. But one of the things we're also doing is to looking outside to see what are the future skills that are coming up to infuse that into what we are doing currently. So it's actually on track. We should be, we've started with mostly the technical space because that's where the bulk of our people have a little bit of challenges in terms of making sure that they know what they need to do and develop themselves in that area. So it's on. We're refreshing it to reflect who we are currently and what our new vision and mission is in the energy sector, not only just the gas or oil and gas sector, the whole value chain of the energy sector. Thank you. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. So thank you, Fatima. So to your question, Chizoba, I think, I'm now going to speak like a practitioner, not a consultant. All right. So I do recognize. And the reason is that I've been in both. I've been in both areas, right? Having worked as core, in the other sector, and then of course now in consulting, and I can relate with some of the things that were said by a lot of our participants in terms of, panelists rather, in terms of the challenges that we're going to face. How do we go through this? But I like what one of the panelists said. I don't know whether it was Muiwa or it was Fatima. I think the first thing is being open-minded. That's number one, right? Oftentimes we say, we as HR, we talk to ourselves a lot. Secondly, we don't have a seat. A lot of HR don't have seats at the table. They don't have a boss in the room. And I think that is changing for some organizations. And we need to, and the reason why this happened, it's because a lot of time we don't sell our position well enough, right? We're not going to, we will say we're not going to boil the ocean. So we're not going to boil the ocean, right? That's the reality. But like I did say in my presentation, the first thing you need to be able to recognize beyond having that open mind is, understand the need for a change. And I think Esther spoke about the why, right? In my presentation, I also spoke about the why. So that needs to be understood. When that is understood, I think we need to then be able to create that value proposition to be able to sell the message. And that value proposition to sell the message means that it is not, and I did say in my presentation, don't go and tell a CEO, right, that we want to do a skills-based organization. It doesn't make any sense to the CEO. And that doesn't make sense to the CFO. But tell the CFO that, you know what, this is a customer service issue that we need to solve. And for us to solve it, this is how we should be organized, right? Now, I mean, Esther, I don't know if you can remember, the first time Esther and I met, was during the CIPM conference. And I recall I was meant to talk about HR strategy. And I know CIPM didn't like me because I just changed the topic on my own. And I said, I'm not going to talk to anybody about how to develop HR strategy. It's not a strategy. Anybody, you can go and read it up. It is how to speak the business of the language. I'm sorry, the language of the business. That's what's critical, right? So I think that's also important. And the Snapchat experience was a classical one. They didn't go out to say we want to change X. They said, if you're going to lay off 14,000 people because of the new jobs that we have, and we're going to recruit 9,000 people, we're going to spend a lot of money. So what do? Let us repurpose our people, right? So HR had to lead that entire conversation. And that is so critical. How do we, turn whatever those issues are to business propositions that we can sell, to our stakeholders? Now, of course, change is going to be quite essential. First, don't boil the ocean, okay? Identify areas where you can make, at some point is what we call, it's small work, but great impact, right? That's going to be quite essential. From your hiring, whether it's going to be learning, even from, like Esther said about rewarding, what do you reward, right? From the skills point of view. Is it skill acquisition? Is it project-based bonuses? Is it flexible? So there's so many things you can reward. Now, so that also had to come into the entire conversation. But more importantly, it's also being able to being able to engage your different stakeholders, understand what would work for them, what's needed for them. I've had sessions where we had to do some change management project. And of course, the starting point is the union. And interestingly, the union were the first to even support, right? So Chizoba probably was one of part of that session, right? Where we had to carry the entire union. And at the end of the day, people were wondering how come were a member of the project team, right? At the end of the day, we're able to actually navigate the challenges and, listen to them. And that's what's also critical. HR, we need to cultivate that power of listening. That's so essential. And that power of co-creation is also important. And I think we were alluded to that in a way where we said, you can't just, sit down and do it yourself. You must co-create. And once people begin to understand the fact that it's not about HR, we are a facilitator. I always say this, right? We are facilitating things, we are developing things, setting the ground rules, but we must learn to co-create. And once we're able to do that, that will also help. And then be able to show let's not focus on output. Oftentimes, there's so much about focusing on output. Let's focus on the outcomes. It's the outcomes that will make that difference. And it's outcomes that people will listen to. So, I can talk on and on, on this, but I want to just pause at this point. And then, if they need to have further conversations, of course, more than happy for us to have this conversation.
And then, that's where the reskilling. So if my job is automated now, that doesn't mean that, I can't learn something new.
Absolutely.
And then move into a different area of the business. Thank you very much for really wonderful insights into the topic. I am looking forward to the conversations afterwards, but I'd like to thank again our panel members. You actually brought this home, for people. One is you kept it simple. Two, you not only did you identify challenges, you also proffered the solutions. And, people can see that to be an SBO is not a one-night thing. It's not, I wake up, I want to be a skills-based organization. There are things that we need to think through, but also the comfort that there are organizations that have started. So in NNPC, there's been projects that have been run by employees in transitioning from public sector into a limited liability company. Esther is doing amazing things in terms of the skills-based, the 450, the 45,000 skills that have been identified, and then the decisions that are being taken around the skills rather than the jobs. And here we have also Dotu, who's looking at the whole person and not the job or the CV that the individual has brought into the job. And here is Muiwa, who's also engaging and training people beyond their jobs and broadening the skills level of the people in anticipation of the whole person getting into that job. So thank you very much, panel members. It's been an absolute pleasure, learning from you. And I'm hoping that you will just give us a few minutes because there are people who want to interact with you as well. So on this note, we will be bringing on Yemi Saka, who's the
we've talked about from the beginning through the end of this session. I would say it's largely around the transformative power of embracing skills as the cornerstone of organizational success. Insightful perspectives shared by our esteemed panelists. Thank you all very much. I think for me, it's evident that the journey towards becoming a skilled-based organization is not just about implementing new strategies or trying to figure out how to adjust to external shocks, but rather about fostering a culture of continuous learning, growth, and more importantly, probably empowerment, regardless of organizational changes or external pressures. So it's really recognizing inherent potential within each member of our workforce and then providing them with the right tools, resources, and opportunities that they need to actually hide. On behalf of Deloitte, I'm deeply grateful to our panelists for their insights and participation. I'm grateful for everyone that's joined this call. Thank you all for your contributions, for your questions. Again, many thanks to our esteemed host as well. And thank you for the session, and thank you all for joining. Thank you. Over to you, Chizoba.
Thank you so much. And it's always a pleasure. We want to thank Deloitte for always organizing these conversations because, on a daily basis, we just only bother about our work. We never really bother about looking into the future and having these futuristic conversations. Just to let you know that Deloitte's thankfully is organizing more of these conversations. So every quarter there will be a conversation around the trends, the human capital trends, and then we'll take a human capital trend, have conversations around it, and see what it is that people are doing and what we can do. So Q2 will be the HC trends for 2024. If you haven't seen it, please go to just Google it. You'll see the 2024 HC trend, and it's talking about the boundaryless human resources in the boundaryless world. And there are great insights that have been provided. These responses come from practitioners and come from leadership of organizations to give us an idea of where organizations are headed and the things that they are doing. In Q3, we're going to talk about the impact of generative AI on human capital function. People have asked me, will human resources remain the way it is? And I say, no, human resources will not remain the way it is because we do have augmented intelligence now. So we have generative AI to help the human intelligence to become augmented intelligence. The things that we couldn't pick up before, there are tools, there's technology that's going to help us as human resources. And then in Q4, we're going to have the CEO, the CFO, and the CHRO transition lab. And that means the head of the institution, the guy who's in charge of the financial resources, and the guy who looks after the people resources of the organization, all three of them conversations around the work that needs to be done. So these are the quarterly conversations, and please do join us every quarter. Look out for the links for these conversations and be part of these conversations. So please go into the chat room and just give us quick feedback. How has this session been for you? In the chat room, give us feedback so that at least we have an idea of how you've enjoyed this session or the insights that you've gotten from this session. And then what is it that you're working away from in this session? Thank you very much, everybody. Let's see your comments. Let's see your comments. Be part of, giving us feedback so that the next time we do some amazing things. Now back to our party after party. Now we have a conversation. Somebody says that what are the skills of human resources in the future? Which of our panelists wants to start off on it? Unmute yourself and just respond.
I mean, I could actually go. So when we talk about the skills of the human resources of the future, recall that when Joseph did his the introduction for us, he told us about all the different skills in terms of technical skills and then human skills. So I would say that for the human resources of the future, the traditional technical skills, in terms of whether, the HR value chain, and then layer on that data and analytics, which is very important. You mentioned generative AI earlier on. It is important also to understand, artificial intelligence, and that is also how that is going to enable the HR of the future. It is also important to go beyond the technical and human skills to the motivations, the interests, the passions of the people, that would drive human resources. So take the traditional skills in terms of recruitment, in terms of selection, performance management, rewards management, take all of those traditional skills, layer on it digital skills, data analytics skills, artificial intelligence skills, and those will be the skills of the future that every HR practitioner who is worth their onions and who would succeed in this role has to start building from now on. But those would still be within the domain of technical skills. Now transition to human skills. And I'll quickly share an example. Somebody wanted to recruit a head of HR barely 2 weeks or so ago, and had gone through the interview process, had identified this fantastic individual for the particular role, but wasn't sure of her people management skills, and also wasn't sure about her motivations and her interests. And she, her suspicion was that, yes, she came to the table to the interview blazing hot, but that she wasn't sure whether this was the kind of individual, they wanted to bring into the organization if she had the right culture fit. And then she reached out to me to do a bit of due diligence for her, which I did, reaching out to individuals strictly in organizations where she had worked and that she currently worked. And the reference was glowing, which was what I took back to, this friend of mine, and the rest is history. This particular lady has been hired. So it just shows you that how you show up on a day-to-day basis in terms of your passions, in terms of your motivations, in terms of your talents, is also very important and would be part of the skills of the future that employers will be looking at.
Thank you very much for that insight. Fatima, please go ahead.
Yes, please. I think Esther has said a lot around technical skills that HR requires, but I think I want to emphasize on 2 major skills that they need to focus on. Consulting skills. We've talked about engaging stakeholders, engaging people, talking to the lines to be able to get them to build things with them. So we have to build consulting skills. The other thing is data analytics. Is very, very important. She did mention data analytics, but what I want to emphasize on it, because if you, as HR, sometimes when we suggest things or we come up with things, the first thing is, how does it affect the bottom line? How does it affect the bottom line? So if you're able to use HR data analytics, you're able to link whatever you are bringing on the table to the bottom line. You're able to show it using the figures, the numbers, and the graphics that business can understand. You're talking your stories, but you're using data to analyze it. I think those 2 skills are really important on top of the skills that Esther has mentioned, because that is the only way you can get to the table, sit on that table, and make contributions. Thank you.
So Muyiwa, I see your hands are up, but you will have to answer a different one. So somebody wants to transition from microbiology education background to a financial advisory role within a skills-based organization. How do you recommend leveraging the principle of skills-based organization to enhance decision-making and strategic alignment, considering the diverse knowledge domains involved? Okay, this anonymous attendee, please next time write in very simple terms, because all these English now has confused me. So you want, how will you move from microbiology education to financial advisory? Okay.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Albi, to that anonymous attendee who posed that question. I think it's easy, and essentially it's around understanding the skill sets required. So your university degrees that gives you a platform. So essentially I'll be just building your quality in terms of knowledge. I'm not sure there are many people that will be currently stay within the confine of their university education today. So even when you look at the shelf life and of that qualification, maybe 2.5 years or thereabout, most of the things that we learned back then, they are obsolete. So, and that is not what a lot of people are living. So we are now in the realms of skills. So essentially, you are not at disadvantage to have studied microbiology. Your aspiration, is to move at least into the financial realm, into the financial space. So the question then is, what kind of skill set do you need to build? So once you so do you need to have a certification that will help you with the foundational knowledge? And if the answer is yes, and which I am also recommending to you, and it's based on what I know, then it's then important for you to go enroll yourself at the relevant certification program that will give you that foundational knowledge, so that you begin to understand the fundamentals, where you can then begin to layer on those skills. So how do you develop these skills? You don't develop the skills by sitting and doing your microbiology related work. It means that you have to transition very quickly. So because skills are built up and beyond the job. So that's the reason why they are called hands-on skills. You must have them at your fingertips. So it's an apprenticeship type of model where it's monkey see, monkey do. So permit the use of that analogy. So where you get a little bit granular to understand that the basics and be beyond the foundation or beyond what you are also learning, from the textbook or maybe from the professional certification and the rest of them. So that's actually how to make a seamless transition. So you then need to give yourself a timeline, because if you also don't give yourself a timeline, you might realize that it may not be achievable for you. So how quickly do I want to do this? And what are the building blocks? Then what are the milestones and the rest of them? And the immediate step that you need to take. So the immediate step you need to take is ensure that you find yourself and be a job relevant at least in finance. That is the first step. Then also ensure that you enroll yourself at least in relevant certification program. That's the second step immediately. Then also have a proposition around timeline and within which you then get qualification and also be exposed to different various functional areas within the finance space. So, and that's all just need to do. So the whole focus really is around the skills. It's really not around the education. So because the education gives a generalist knowledge or the background or the foundation. That's all. So you've gone to university to build, to have a degree. So the degree opened up your mind such that you become very learnable, you become very trainable. So whatever it is that you're able to grab and you can build upon that because you have that foundation. So it means that you're prepared, your mind is vital, and you can also build up new knowledge, new skills onto what you already know. So that's the foundation. Then you then get into the industry, and it's where you can then begin to pick up those skills. And that is how I'm to make that transition. I hope that helps. But I'm happy.
And that is from a man who moved from engineering to human resources. So I don't know who else could have answered it better, maybe except except Fatima, who's an accountant who's moved into human resources. So we're just going to take like a minute. I would like us to see some of the things that Deloitte does so that it gives you an idea of where to go for help in different areas. And so a lot of the things that we do, and I hope, I wish can you all see this slide? If you can see, just put it in the chat room. So there's human resource transformation, organization architecture, organizational transformation, strategic change and leadership, learning, job and competency architecture, rewards, assessment. And so you can see the different areas under human resources transformation. There is HRIS technology, people data models. Under organizational and architecture, that's organizational transformation or the architecture transformation, strategy, operating model design, process design, recruitment, selection, org design, and strategic workforce planning. And one of the things that we've done with Deloitte in the past, when I was in service, is strategic workforce planning, looking from a skills point of view, what skills do we require, not what kind, not the kinds of jobs that we require, the skills that we require, what numbers are those, and then what kinds of skills. Strategic change and leadership, alignment, change management, culture change, workforce transformation, digital, RPA and cloud adoption, employee engagement experience. And then they have an absolutely fantastic HR Learning Academy, even if I have to say so. I have sat through that academy and I learned a lot from that academy. The academy is not theory, the academy is practice, and there is less talking, plenty doing. So learners learn by doing. The learning at the HR Business Partner Lab is one of the most exciting labs I have seen where there is a lot of doing. So job architecture, job profiling, competency modeling, job evaluation and grading is another area of strength for Deloitte. Reward strategy, remuneration analysis, everything, compensation, incentive design, salary surveys, assessment model design, readiness assessment, competency-based assessment, business chemistry assessment. So you can be the best person, but if the business chemistry is not there for the board, for the leadership, sometimes they are not able to work together. So of course, you know that Deloitte is still the leading firm in terms of the future of work, future of talent optimization and workforce optimization. Then there is the HRC, Human Capital Operate, where there is learning, change management, org design, and we can actually operate it for you. There's organization and people, that's about data cleansing, data analytics, scenario modeling, design and integration of people practices, talent management. You know, that's a buzzword that we use, but a lot of organizations don't understand it. Performance management, they are very top-notch. It's about conversations. It's not about that long line of things that you take. It's about the check-ins, about the conversations, about directions that we provide for people. Career management, new thinking around career management, succession planning, management, succession planning and management, talent acquisition, and then of course our ESG strategy. If you were part, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, whether it was 2016 human capital trends that talked about sustainability, and that people want to work in organizations that are sustainable organizations. So this is the human capital offerings for Deloitte, and I'm hoping that you can have a conversation with us at some point around some of these areas and what Deloitte can do for you. Thank you very much, Deloitte. And let's go back to the questions that we have. So in terms of those questions, Dotun, maybe you chip in here. Who is responsible for identifying skills, knowledge gaps in employees? Is it the organization or the individual that we assess themselves? Anyone can jump in at this point, but if Dotun, if you're there, let's start with you.
Oh, thank you again, Chizoba. I think to a large extent, at the entry level, it becomes the responsibility of the organization to determine the skills that are required for you to come into the into the business. All right, and this is done in conjunction with the requirement of the work. Don't let us use job now, as it were. Then secondly, when you come into the organization, it should become scientific, using your performance management, process to determine skills gaps, and of course, determine if we need to do some reskilling, upskilling, and so on and so forth. Then the employee also have a responsibility. By the time that is identified, he has a duty, he has a responsibility to see how he can build up himself. All right. So that's the way I look at it.
Okay. So Esther, what do you think?
So we have a mantra in my organization that your career starts with you. What that means is that you are primarily responsible for identifying all that you require, to progress within your career. But then I hear what Dotun said with respect to even defining the skills that are required in the organization. So the organization defines the skills that are required. But in terms of the gaps, it is a combination of the employee and the employer, specifically the line manager. So what that means is that as an employee, you continuously assess yourself against the skills that have been defined by the company. Where am I at this point? What additional skills do I need to acquire? What level do I need to get to? And then when you also have the check-ins with your line managers or with HR or your business partner or anybody who's responsible for also having engagements with the individual about their career and about their skills development in the organization, they can assist in helping them to identify those gaps that may be a blind spot for the individual concerned. So when that, is done in combination, the employee as well as the organization, line manager, peers within the company, then you have a 360-degree view of what the skills gap are and how this can be corrected.
Muyiwa, your hands are up, sir. Go ahead.
Well, Esther took that from my mouth. So, because that was the exact perspective I was going to share. It's co-owned and be between the employer as well as the individual. So broadly, the employer defines and the skill set required and be across the entire organization, and which form the basis upon which an individual gets selected, coming on board. So, however, there will be a need for an ongoing audit and of skills readiness by that individual against what has been set aside as the standard, in terms of the organization. So, how the genuineness, at least of individual, is really important here. And that is where it's important that you can then leverage on tools available by organizations like Deloitte and all of that, where an individual can then do a check-in and it's on an ongoing basis to see, am I at par with the skills required for me to deliver this job? Or let's even assume that an individual wants to transition into other roles. It then gives the person an opportunity to go and check and say, what are the skill sets required for me to move into this role? And what do I have now? He can do a quick check and based on the audit and identify the gaps and begin to build and, himself or herself around that to ensure that it's able to bridge that gap. That also accelerates the person's readiness to transition and into such function. Overall, it's joint ownership between the institution as well as the individual. But there must be authenticity, genuineness of individual to commit a little bit to the outcome. So it won't be a case that even when you realize that you have a gap, then you are now pushing back, denying or saying, well, I'm not sure that my gap, sometimes it can become very emotional. So, but sometimes when you then leave it to the institution, an individual become uptight because it now seems like an exam, that is being conducted and maybe to employees now in determining their skills gap. But overall, both parties must commit to it, and it's in the interest of the institution. Thank you.
Okay, so we just have probably like 15 minutes to go so that we can let you off for the rest of the day. There's a question that has come, but I think I want to modify that question a bit. That question says about optimizing optimum workforce by planning the reskilling, upskilling process. What I want to ask is, every single time that there's pressure, like now the foreign exchange we have a foreign exchange pressure. The first thing that gets cut off is employee training. So how are we going to manage, these reskilling, upskilling, skilling in organizations where there is, people think that training is an expense and it's a cost to the organization. So anybody, in fact, all four of you need to answer this, because as HR directors, it's you people that we look to. Then you tell us there's no money for training. So please explain to us.
Can I go first?
Yes, Muyiwa.
All right, thank you very much. So it's the reality of now. And again, and that's the biggest challenge that HR leaders have to persuade the leadership around the intent and of training and development, not as a cost, but as an investment. And usually very difficult conversation to have with leadership, particularly when they're looking at the bottom line, profitability, and they are being paid over by the stakeholders, their shareholders in terms of thinning margin and the rest of them. But what do we now need to do, as HR leaders? Number one, is create that value. Number two is also demonstrate the value accretion from that exposure, from that training. And number three is also to see if there are other ways, because how we can achieve that learning transfer or other interventions that can be deployed without necessarily having to lend the balance sheet heavily, because again, that sits with us really. So there are some that training that can be done. Maybe I have the cost sometimes without having people in the classroom. So some of those initiatives then need to come into bed. But fundamentally is the shift around, or the conversation around, looking at training as an investment rather a cost, and having that very authentic conversation with the leadership, and also demonstrating the value in terms of either in terms of the ROI or the return on the impact on the impact that is on the workforce. Once we are able to show that convincingly, I also do believe that leadership and we have a rethink around that. Today, the biggest challenge that most organizations have is talent, from acquisition of that talent, onboarding them, developing them, retaining them as well. So because we are in a high attrition environment today, it is easy to have that conversation before now, because everyone is dealing with high attrition. And if you don't have the people that will deliver the numbers, and you can as well just throw your hands in the sky and say, we cannot deliver those numbers ultimately. So we must ensure that we have that conversation with the leadership around selling the value and the benefits. Thank you.
So one of the things I've also seen is that because people haven't really moved into digital learning, they struggle with, people still think that learning is face-to-face. And that's where I will encourage everyone, speak to Deloitte, about digitalization of learning and the creation of those digital platforms, that will reduce the cost of learning, in organizations. We've got Fatima's hand up on this issue of, we've got to reskill, upskill, train people across a broad spectrum of learnings, yet there is no money and no investment in learning.
Well, Fatima is not talking about money, though.
I have to. I'm a limited liability company. Money is important. Bottom line is important. Very, very important. More than ever. So truly for us, it's more or less blended. You have to be. I think as every organization should try and find the balance, because I think you talked about ROI. One of the things you need to look at is the cost of laying off, the cost of recruiting, and the cost of upskilling. You have to do that analysis. So that's why I was talking about us having the data analytics skills. If you do that, it's very glaring as to, do I lay off these people? How much will it cost me to recruit? How much will it cost me to reskill them, to upskill them so that they can, I don't have to spend that amount of money. That helps. And the other one that you talked about is blended learning. We do a lot of e-learning because we've seen the effect of e-learning. I think our young graduates that we recruited, we did our foundational training absolutely online, and it was very, very useful and impacting. And we have a generation of people that are coming into the workplace that are comfortable with technology. So it's very easy for you to do that learning online. So by the time you reach out to the Deloitte, you buy off the rack, you talk to the industry, there are a lot of companies that provide that. You look at what works for you. You build a learning ladder for a person, and he does it at his own pace. You give the timeline. The costs are shared, economies of scale. The other thing is that one of the key things is that as HR, I'm not sure we've been able to determine the ROI. It's been very difficult to determine whether it is a learning that gave rise to that particular improvement in the bottom line or not. It's been neither here nor there because it can be attitudinal, it can be something else. So if we're able to get matrices that helps us to link those items to the bottom line, I think it will be much easier for us to maintain our money. But overall, most organizations know that they have to train people. But when push comes to shove, they start with cutting off the training budgets when they come to reduce the operational costs around people. But they know it. So we need to take it upon ourselves to show them that that is not the place to cut. When you're cutting, if you cut in that place, you're wounding the organization, not making any progress if you do that, because it's very important to have an engaged and capable workforce to be able to deliver on your activities, on your other service, production, whatever it is, whatever value you are looking for. If you don't build those capacities, you will not be able to get that. And people worry about spending that amount of money because they feel that people will leave. People will always leave, whether you train them or not. Just look at it as the bigger picture. We're training more Nigerians. It's very difficult for you to just stay in your tight corner and say, I won't train because they will leave. You will suffer. So if somebody trains and somebody gains, at the end of the day, we will reach a stabilization point where the skills are there, open in the market for us. So with this war for talents that we're having will not be so much because every organization is doing their best. Just find out the rate at which you do that and build a bigger pool of what you have lost such that you always have that continuous talent in your system that helps you to deliver on your value. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to provide a bit more insight as well, you know, when sitting in Central Bank and we had put in this digital learning platform with almost about 30,000 learning assets, there was a guy in Maiduguri who sat and did about 405 courses, very short courses in the space of roughly about 3 months. And what happened is, you know, when he's off duty, you know, there wasn't much. This was right in the middle of some of the insecurity in Maiduguri. And he sat there and he was just learning. We actually flew him out to London for a conference because he was our highest, he was utilizing that system and we wanted to incentivize people. But in the course of my conversation with him, you know, I realized that there was a pattern to his learning. So he wasn't learning random stuff. He was learning things within the technology space. This was a security guy. He was learning things in the technology space because he was hoping he could convert to technology. And he had done even some external things on his own. And to be able to continue to motivate him based on his interest, we actually then had to post him, get him posted into IT. And he said, you know, his area of interest was cybersecurity, which if you look at it, there was a security guy sitting down somewhere. Who would ever think that he will make it into cybersecurity? You know, if you look at what's the name of that actress? There is an Bookie Wright, who's now, you know, an IT auditor from being, you know, an actress. And that's because, you know, she got the platform for learning, for doing the certifications, you know, and stuff. So thank you, Fatima, for that insight. And if we don't train the people, they will still, if they stay with us and they are not trained, they are even worse than when we train them and they leave, because there's a lot more damage that's being done to our organization. Esther, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chizoba. Just building on what has been said, truth be told, you know, whenever there is this economic headwind, the reality of the times, there are impacts on various processes within the organization, especially training. Maybe because of what Muyiwa said, where some organizations do not look at training as an investment, or simply because, you know, there's no funding to do the training. And for me and us at our organization, this is where having creative solutions to delivering learning in the organization come in. And you have already mentioned some of them, Chizoba, and some of the other panelists have talked about them, like blended learning. So for us in the organization, we have what we refer to as MTN Learn, or now it's called ULearn. And we have personalized it to say it isn't just the organization putting in place the digital learning platform for you to access, but you take the decision to access it. And it has a huge bouquet of training programs, of courses. You can, you know, do tests, you can do exams, you can receive certificates from going through those particular training programs. So we have made sure that that is available. And we also did, the only difference is that we didn't fly anybody out to London. However, the individuals who engaged with the ULearn platform across the global footprint, we identified them and incentivized that behavior. So that is an encouragement to so many other people also who, you know, can easily go into that platform. In addition to that, we have an in-house faculty for times like this where we're not able to do partnerships with some external training organizations. And this in-house faculty has gone through the trainer program by, you know, certified training organizations and consulting organizations to be able to deliver training when, you know, of course, you know, we're not able to do it externally. And also to incentivize learning, like I said. So if organizations begin to infuse these creative approaches to how learning is delivered in the organization, and also take those decisions that we mentioned, you know, based on the skills that have been, you know, acquired by people within the organization, then, you know, we wouldn't have a problem with having people who are well delivered who are well trained to deliver on the goals of the organization.
One of the things that organizations aren't utilizing is peer-to-peer learning and
Yeah.
you know, the brown bag sessions, you know, and one of the things that, you know, I wanted to do in Central Bank, you know, I was able to do it with my team, but not to try and entrench it in the organization, was to sponsor those brown bags, you know, so provide lunch. So lunch and learn, just provide lunch, and then somebody takes on a topic, you know, and talks on it, you know, and then we can have a conversation. So there, like you said, there are very creative ways that we can. So Dr. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, thank you again. There's no doubt about it. This is always this has always been management perception that training does not have value to the organization. And I think to a large extent, we as practitioners, we have to be able to, first of all, change our perception towards training. All right, that does training require movement? Because what I've understood, you know, from my experience is that if you don't move me from one location to the other, or probably go out of my immediate location, I am not being trained. Okay, so we have a lot to do in dealing with that perception as practitioners. That is one thing that we have to think, very, very well, and have to sit very well with us. The second thing is that most organizations, they hardly do post-training evaluation, okay, which is one of those things the panelists have talked about, to be able to determine the extent to which learning had taken place. All right, are we evaluating it? Are we getting feedback? Are we doing all of that before we translate that into return on investment for the organization? So, because as much as possible, organizations don't see essence in training if you cannot put the figures on the table that this is what has changed, either in terms of behavior or in terms of skills. that it has changed. If you cannot prove that, you can't put that on the table, that aspect of our business is definitely going to be suffering. So it's very important that we need to be able to evaluate, and we'll be able to translate, our training into Naira and Kobo, and be able to put that to management and see how that works. I mean, you talked about automation, which of course is very critical, and that counters the perception and the position that so many people seem to have, that you have to move from one location to the other before you get trained. You have to travel, you have to get ESTA code, you have to do all of these things. And to drive that within your organization, you need a lot of work to be done. That's just what I would say at this point.
Thank you so much. Just to check with those who remained, I hope this conversation has been useful to you. If it's been useful, please tell us yes. If it's not been useful, tell us no. So just let's quickly go in terms of your final comments, before we shut down. But before then, Joseph, there is a conversation that says something, there was a question or a comment around a comment around Deloitte. Do you have this kind of forum for other workforce, or is it just for human capital?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. So we do have, different sessions, right? That is not just for human capital. And I'm sure there's several that we've done the last couple of months. So it may be from, because of the way we're structured, right? Maybe from our tax team, our finance team, sustainability team. So there's several. So I think once we have your email, whatever, we can always share with you whenever we have any session coming up. But just to speak to, I think there was a question you asked, and I think I want to just share because, it was about, I think it was about skills that we need to, and I think the different, panelists actually spoke to that, but I think, what I also see as the skills that we need to build as HR. Like we typically will say, charity should start, right from home, right? So we can't give what we don't have. So I think the level of digital fluency of HR is quite important, right? We need to understand the bit around, it's good to say it, but instead of being adaptable and being agile, and that's very important. I've been to sessions where, I was talking to HR strategy for an organization, and they were so excited about being agile, and asked the question, what does it mean to be agile? And it was more like, someone was like, when you are light on the ground, I just couldn't understand it. And that was an HR person. I said, what? So why are we not even leading that crusade or being agile? In the things we do in HR, how many of the things we do, have we even talked about this? We talk about flexible in HR. Do we even implement the flexible in HR? So those are some of the things I also need. So we need to be adaptable, right? So that we can take the same lesson to people outside. There's also the bit of course, being able to really show that our decisions are data driven. I think we spoke about data, a lot, but the reality is that how often do we show? I listened to Fatima talked about, when there's a shift, right? Maybe most I can talk about whether it's from the learning or from the training or from behavior. But the reality is that even the training we're trying to people that go for, some of this is actually meant to change their behaviors. So the reality is that how do we measure those things and how do we bring those things to the table? And it's not. I've been in a situation where someone came to the meeting and said, "Oh, it was a board meeting," and just to talk about how he's delivered extensively or well in the particular year, how he saved them so much money from the training budget. And the board chair said, I'm so sorry. In one breath, we're saying that we're having issues in the organization, and another breath, we're saying that we've saved so much money, from our training budget. Then there's a problem. So, and the issue is, HR, you need to go back and go and rethink about what you just told us. So again, it's the issue is how often do we make decisions based on data, right, that we can actually relate with. And I think the issue of even HR, the old issue, and I think it was Fatima who spoke about it, lifelong learning. right? How have you also embraced it within HR for us to see what to take it to, the rest of the organization? So those for me are just some of the things I thought were
about questioning. Okay, it is about questioning people management practices along the entire HR value chain. It is important that we look at reskilling, not just for the job of today. It is not reskilling for the current job, but it is reskilling towards shifting from jobs to skills. And the HR leader and HR community team members need to, be developed, or to be to have their capabilities developed to be able to lead that charge, because you can't lead what you do not know. So that capability development and building for the HR leader and for the HR community is key to be able to lead the charge towards a skills-based organization in your company. And so go with that mindset when you go back into the organization to begin to look at opportunities to question what you do today and how you can make that transition in a gradual but surely, steady manner that eventually will lead you to achieve the goals and objectives that you have set for this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Fatima?
Thank you very much. For me, I think what I would like to leave is that we need to be open-minded as HR practitioners. We need to get away from that structure, that policing the business and the rest of it. We need to open our minds first and foremost, fix ourselves before we begin to talk to the business. We also need to prepare ourselves to lead the future, to lead the employees that are coming into the future. And if we don't continue, like Esther mentioned, developing ourselves and finding out what are the trends, what can we do to move with the trends in order to, as the generations come into the workplace, we're going to have challenges if we also don't step up and catch up with what is happening in the trends, because that's the only way we can work with the businesses to be able to develop strategies that would help in alignment with the people that are actually within that environment. Because the people will change in the businesses, generations will move out, some will come in. So we also need to step up, equip ourselves to be able to create an HR of the future that is agile and adaptable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Muyiwa?
Thank you very much, Chizoba, and thanks to other discussants on this, breakfast session. I think it's lunch already now. I think what I want to leave with, the participants really is around the fact that the business of HR is business itself. So, which implies that HR does not exist in a vacuum. HR exists for the business. So our knowledge of HR should be used and be to business advantage. So we must immerse ourselves in the business, and while we then use the HR knowledge to enhance business and the capability. So to that degree, it becomes very easy for us to engage various stakeholders, particularly from the benefit perspective, benefit realization perspective. So the concept that we've learned today, that we discussed extensively today, becomes very easy to sell to the leadership, particularly when we look at it from the business value proposition perspective. So we are not only looking at this as a theory that, oh, this is a new concept, shove it down the throat of the institution because it become new. But once we are able to break it into pieces and say, this becomes the value realization or value accruable to the institution, and to that degree, there will be acceptability at least on the side of various stakeholders. And the second bit really is around the fact that, and just speaking again a little bit to the last question that you posed on training. So there is a 70-20, 10% rule of learning. So again, as HR leaders, we have responsibility to begin to shift attention away from the 10%, which is mostly done in the classroom, as well as at the other various, elements, and now espouse more around the 70%. And which we don't have a framework, to push across. And the reason why I'm saying this is that you know, a lot of learning that will take place at least in the workplace, you know, from line manager to associate and the rest of that. But the question is that who is documenting those experiences? So how do we then ensure that we build a framework, we have a structure around that so that we can incubate that, become part of the knowledge and the management bank, such that the organization then begin to see that, look, HR is generating value from this perspective. So when we then go for the 10%, they won't only see that 10% as a mere cost. Rather, we are also demonstrating at the other areas that where organization has benefited from the 70%, 20%, which is through the social learning and the peer-to-peer learning that exists at these organizations. So those will be my final parting shot at the to the participant. To the participant. Thank you very much, Isola. And thanks to the leadership of Deloitte for putting this.
Of us will have realized in our organizations, something has started happening. My advice to all the participants is how can we deepen this and how can we enrich this in our organization as we live here, because the shift is already here with us. Once again, I want to say thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here. And I look forward to the rest of the programs in the year 2024.
Thank you very much. Jude Braille Umahi, you raised your hand, and Badiola Egundeyi. Please, can you just type what you wanted to share with us in the chat room so we can pick it up? There is a comment from Mwamaka on UK that a lot of our learning is not need-based, and that's the reason why a lot of the learning is asked. And I think there was a question from Dushima. Dushima was saying that, are we focused now on reskilling the workforce that we currently have, or we're looking for external candidates? I think it's a mix. As more people are moving into the SBOs, then you find that you have internal candidates who can fill some of those positions. But if you do not have, if you're not moving towards a skills-based organization, it's difficult, because you have boxed people in boxes and you haven't liberated them from those boxes. My final words to everyone is that, yes, we're talking skills-based organization, but a lot of these things started historically in an attempt to manage efficiency of organizations. The world started specializing the task to be able to get the skills, train people, and get them to do that work. And that was the time when, the broader element of the whole person was not critical to organizations. There is a major shift now. And that major shift is that the work that we do has nothing to do with the job. So remember the years of the process design and process understanding processes. You found out that you then now had to go and attach people to those activities. And you find that the people that you have attached to those activities came from disparate parts of the organization and sometimes doesn't follow the way they work. So organizations who based their organization on their process design, that's process-centered organizations, are more likely to understand these SBOs and head in this direction. The tendency for organizations to draw their organization charts based on functions sometimes limits them because they think in terms of those functions, but processes do not always follow functions. So in terms of liberating the work from the job is to think processes, what needs to be done. That thing that needs to be done, can it be done internally or can it be done externally? Can it be done by somebody or a group of people do it from beginning to end, and then we can organize around that thing that needs to be done? And if you look at the competencies are really not around the organization structure. Competencies are around processes. This is the knowledge, the skill, and the attitude that I require to be able to carry out this activity from the beginning to end. And every activity has a beginning and an end. There is an outcome for the activity. So if we can do that mental shift, then we can then now start looking at our organizations. What do we need to do? And like the panelists said, start small. Start small. get help, learn, train yourself, and then the journey, you can start that journey. So I'd just like to thank you, every single person who stayed back, 200 of us who stayed back to listen to the rest of the conversation, and then to the over 400 people who joined us at the sometime in the middle of the conversations that we're having. Thank you very much to Deloitte. And I'm hoping that some of you will reach out to Deloitte, in terms of a conversation, to progress this conversation, to learn more about this space, and also to take advantage of all their offerings to be able to leapfrog into the areas where we need to be. So on that note, we'd like to thank Joseph, to thank the Deloitte team, and then to thank my moderator, Jumoke, Chike, Nkem, Moji, and all the Deloitte team that have provided support for us. Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Fatima. Thank you, Dotu. And thank you, Muiwa. It's been an absolute pleasure having these conversations with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sola.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Have a
everyone.
nice
very
day.
much.
Have a beautiful day. It was
Alright.
excellent.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you,
And
Joseph.
yes, Nwamaka on UK, try and call me.
Esther.
Yeah,
No
I
worry.
shouldn't leave.
It's off,
Ah.
offline, no, off your mic.
Don't worry.
Off your
We'll
mic,
catch
oh.
up.
We'll